Okay, yeah, it should be live now. So, yeah, sorry for a bit of a delay. I kind of had to make sure that I had everything in order so that way I could just go ahead and stream this completely interrupted. Or I mean, or uninterrupted. Sorry, not interrupted. But yeah, just wanted to make sure I had everything in order for that, and I'm trying to make sure that my stream looks good and that you guys can see the tier list and everything, because I can't really see because I'm going to be looking at stuff on my phone, and my video preview is currently being covered up by the tier list, so I can't really see anything. So let me just do that real fast. Okay, yeah, so we're good. So yeah, I've got a pretty large script. It's like 18 pages, although there is a picture of the tier list at the top of the page, and the 18th page isn't completely full or anything like that. So I've got a lot of stuff to read. That's why I wanted to make sure I had everything in order. I have like 2 bottles of water. I have the tier list. Currently can't see it because I've scrolled all the way down here. Kind of want to do like a surprise reveal almost, but yeah, I have my stats down here so that way I can make sure that I'm not dropping too many frames or anything like that. And if this number starts going down, so I can tell like dropping frames, or this number starts going up, also it might give me a warning. I'm not really sure. But yeah, this is basically just my OBS window in the background, like OBS right here, so you can kind of see all of that stuff. Although I don't know if you can see my mouse, actually, you probably can't, so what I just said basically did nothing. But yeah, before we start the tier list, I've got a lot of stuff to say, actually. So, 3.1.0 is the most recent patch in Ultimate, at least at the time of creating this, and it's one of the most game-changing. A lot of characters received strong buffs or nerfs, and a lot of multi-hit and jabs were fixed, though some still need some work. Because of these changes and the fact that I never made a tier list for 3.0.0, I feel the need to create this one, and feel that it would also be the perfect time to create this one. This tier list has been one of, if not the most time-consuming tier lists I've ever made. Try to play and watch gameplay of characters that I wasn't sure about in my last tier list. One thing that I will be the first to admit is that a lot of my playlists in my previous tier lists were incredibly flawed due to my lack of knowledge of the characters and also their disinterest in the playstyle, but I've tried a lot to avoid this, and I've tried to like judge all of the characters not based on like matchups to my main being Lucina. So, because like a lot of characters were placed in really weird spots on my tier list compared to other tier lists because I just didn't see them that in other spots where they should actually be, because Lucina kind of just destroys most characters in the game anyway. But yeah, I would be judging them based on traits that I think the game's favored, or the game favors, including good ground and air speed, good range, good recovery, good kill setups, and decent edgeguard ability. Having a lot of good combos, projectiles, or character-specific traits like Joker's Rebellion is also something that is important, but it's not as mandatory as some of the other things that I stated there. And then a few characters have specific quirks to them that kind of can just completely disregard having a lack of something that I deem important. So like, certain characters may be pretty slow, but they have projectiles to make up for it and things like that. So, yeah, the main reason that I'm streaming this and stuff like that is just in case I place someone completely wrong. I would like to learn my mistake in their placement, so if people think that I've put someone in the wrong spot, then I will be correcting that as long as I get a proper reason for them being in the wrong spot. So, like, you can't just say that Bowser Jr. is the best character in the game if I've put him in, like, mid-tier, because he's your favorite character in the game. I need something a little bit more than that, especially for that large of a leap as well. Maybe not something that's like 1 to 2 spots, but something as large of a leap from like low tier to high tier would be needing a little bit more than just a small correction. But yeah, the tier list follows a similar design to my previous tier list. S and A tier at the top and represent the top 10 characters. I would expect all of these characters to be in a tournament. Like, they very rarely are not in tournaments, and if they aren't in the tournament, that's probably more rare than if they are in one. B tier is going to be a high tier and consist of like my top 30. I believe it's like 33 to 11 characters, so any of those characters will be in high tier. And it's just, they're a lot better than like the other tier list, but they're not as great as S tier or A tier, but they still have a lot of good things about them. And I will be slowly moving my way up this tier list, why nothing is visible currently. But yeah, we'll slowly be moving my way up, so I'll start at bottom tier, which is going to be E tier. Or no, I think it's F tier actually. Yeah, it's F tier. And then E tier is low tier. C and D are mid tiers. The characters there are usually in tournaments, but it's not completely uncommon to not see them in tournaments. E tier is going to be low tier. I don't really expect them to be in many tournaments, and then bottom tier, same thing. I don't really expect them to be in any tournaments, but it's not that surprising if they are in tournaments either. Like, I could see somebody trying to do some good with a low tier character, because a lot of low tiers might have something that hasn't been discovered, but it's really useful. Like, I know for a while I considered Shulk like a mid tier, and then Dial Storage was discovered. Or, I don't know when it was discovered, but I found out about it a few weeks ago, so that changed my placement of him a lot. And then a lot of people have been seeming to change placements of Shulk. And my placement of Shulk is pretty similar to that, just a fair warning on that. But, yeah, I guess now we can go ahead and begin with a tier list. By the way, if your character that you play is, like, considered bottom tier to me, that's not to, like, discourage you from playing them or anything. That's mainly just because I don't see them having traits that are favorable in the metagame. So, you can still play them as long as you don't plan on going to a tournament. I would say, like, if you play, like, the bottom character of a tier list, number 74, then you can still win out of your friend group, most likely, but it will be a little bit harder to do so in certain scenarios, unless your friends have never played Smash Bros. Before, and then you'll probably still have maybe some trouble, depending on who they pick. But yeah, I guess now we can go ahead and get started. So, for bottom tier, which is going to be F tier, it's going to be my bottom 5, and you also saw some of low tier, but that's fine. They're pretty common characters to appear there, and you can kind of see them still. But yeah, number 74 is Piranha Plant. Piranha Plant just seems like a character that was designed to lose neutral. I'm pretty sure he's a zoner, but I honestly have no idea what Piranha Plant is still. Dash Attack is one of the worst moves in the game. Tilts and jabs do nothing except for down tilt, which is a combo starter at lower percents, and it mainly just combos into a single fair. Because Piranha Plant really just has pretty much no combos. Up throw can kill off the top at like 130%. For certain characters, but it's pretty much your only kill throw and your only useful throw. Piranha Plant's disadvantage is incredibly bad. Our advantage is okay because Piranha Plant can somewhat edgeguard, but Piranha Plant's so slow that spacing is pretty important for Piranha Plant, because if you just like miss a move, or not really spacing, but just like being next to your opponent's important, because if you miss a move, then you will be punished for it. But if you do space a move, you're much more rewarded for doing it, as any character, but with Piranha Plant, you can't really afford to space, which is kind of bad for him, because a lot of his moves are just so slow that even if you do space them, you're just still not going to get rewarded. Jab is kind of decent for Piranha Plant. He does have a bit of range with his down special, but that's pretty much the most range he has out of any move, like Patui, I guess, which is his neutral special. It also has a decent amount of range, but it's still not that great of a move in general. It can kill at higher percents, but it's very predictable, and it has a lot of startup. It does give him a bit of super armor, but it's not that great. Piranha Plant is kind of heavy, which is pretty good for Plant, but it's still not going to save them from dying at high, or not even at higher percents, but at lower percents, because they're very easy to edgeguard. They do have a pretty solid recovery, but it's still one of the easier ones to edgeguard, as it doesn't really offer them too much protection, and it's their only option, so they can't really mix up their recovery that much because they don't have that high of a jump height. Next is going to be Isabelle at number 73. Isabelle's consistently been at the lower end of most tier lists. The fact that she's been nerfed in pretty much every patch definitely doesn't help her out in that regard. She can combo somewhat, but it's not that great. It's like down throw fair. It's just the same as Piranha Plant's. Fair has a decent amount of range, and so does back air. She has a decent advantage shape, which definitely gives her something that's a little bit better than Piranha Plant, but a lot of her zoning tools just aren't that great. They nerfed Fishing Rod for some reason, apparently. I actually was unsure of how the Fishing Rod change works, but according to a lot of Isabelle players, it was a very bad change, so I'm just going to write it off and say that it was pretty bad. But yeah, a lot of her strategy is very obvious at the beginning of a match. Like Isabel's don't really have that much they can mix up. They'll most likely just try and stay on one side of the stage and fair and back air or a fishing rod. They'll probably plant their down special to try and get people to walk on it, but it's very obvious where it is, and it can just be destroyed by a forward smash. And if Isabel's in the blast radius of the explosion, then she takes a decent amount of damage as well. Um, Her disadvantage state's pretty bad because, like, she can get out of disadvantage in a way using, like, fair or back air, because they have projectiles, so it's pretty good for just keeping people off of you, but it just doesn't do that much knockback or damage, so they're not that threatening. And characters with reflectors can just get past it pretty easily. But yeah, her damage output is also very low. She just doesn't really do that much, so a lot of characters will just approach her for free because she's just not that threatening. And then she's also very light, so she gets into disadvantage a lot. Kirby was a character that I kind of had hope for, but now I'm starting to see that he's just not going to get any better than probably the bottom 5 directly in the middle. He has a lot of good combos, but he doesn't really have that much range on his moves, like forward air and back air, down air, up. Pretty much all of his moves just lack a lot of range. Like up special probably has the most range out of any of his moves because it shoots a projectile in front of him, but it's still very laggy. Kirby's pretty slow in the ground and in the air, so it's pretty much just like a target. He's very large whenever he like floats, he kind of expands, so it's pretty easy to hit him out of the air. And it's very obvious how he's going to recover. Like if he's up in the air, he'll probably down special or up special to try to land quickly, and he doesn't really have that great of landing options in the first place, so he just gets juggled hard until he loses his stock most of the time. He does have a lot of good things with his neutral special that he can get, depending on the character you're fighting. So, like, if you're fighting Shulk, for example, that's a really good character's neutral special to have, because that has a lot of utility for Kirby, but it's still not that great. Kirby can absorb projectiles, which is kind of useful, but not really, because it does have a lot of in-lag, and then if you absorb explosive projectiles, like Snake's grenades, then you take damage. But you don't take that much knockback, which is okay, but you still have end lag from eating the projectile in the first place, so they can just approach you and then punish you for trying to avoid projectiles. King K. Rool is probably one of controversial placements, or one of my more controversial placements here. He has pretty much zero combos. Like, I can't really think of anything other than he buries you with like down tilt or down throw and then hits you with a down smash, but that's just because you can't mash fast enough at certain percents to get out of them. Maybe you can consider like crown into dash attack a combo, but that's kind of just the projectiles there and it's returning, so you get hit by the dash attack and then you get hit by the crown as it's returning the K roll, so it's not really a combo, but it kind of counts, I guess. King K. Rool has a very slow speed, which definitely is not something that's favored. Like, a lot of the characters in bottom tier here just have pretty much no speed. King K. Rool honestly doesn't have that much kill power unless he's got his setups working, which is basically just down throw or down tilt is his only setup. I guess maybe the cannon, whenever it absorbs, like the cannonball, it can also suck up people and then spit them back out, and it can be used to kill if your opponent doesn't have any idea of how to tech. But I mean, outside of that, it really just doesn't have that much use. Up throw can be used to kill in specific scenarios, especially on like Battlefield, but it's not that strong of a kill throw. King K. Rool's projectiles are pretty slow as well, so they're not even that useful. So he's not even that great of a zoner, and that's kind of what he's supposed to be, like a heavy zoner. He can survive for a long time because he's the second heaviest character in the game, but he's still got a really bad disadvantage. Like his recovery, if you're like anywhere that's not directly above K. Rool, then you can punish him for up specialing. But if you're above K. Rool, then he can maybe hit you with a propeller, although it doesn't really have that much range and it's pretty easy to avoid. He also gets joked pretty badly because he has very bad landing options. Bowser Jr. has decent combos. He has a decent moveset as well. Like he doesn't have any moves that I would consider to be useless, which a lot of characters down here do, except maybe Neutral B is kind of useless. Like, I could see it being used for zoning, but it's not that great. His up special is pretty bad, because it will leave you not really in special fall, but you will be left in the air with only one move. It's really easy to avoid because it doesn't have that much range. And Bowser Jr. will also take a lot more damage whenever he's outside of his cart because he's pretty light there, so then he can just enter disadvantage forever. And then if you push him with a wind box like Mario's down special, then he just flies around and you don't even have to worry about him. His disadvantage can leave him defensive a lot because of that, but he doesn't really have a bad one in terms of like on-stage disadvantage. It's one of the weaker ones for sure, but it's not as bad as any of the other bottom tier characters. A lot of his moves are incredibly slow, and that's why his disadvantage is bad. Except, like, his aerials and tilts are decently fast, but they don't really have that much range. But they are kind of quick. Just like his smash attacks are much slower, but they also don't really have that much range. His out of shield's okay, because he's got Nair out of shield, but that's pretty much it. If he got a decent buff to improve, like, his damage output, or make it where a lot of his moves have a little bit less lag, like his smash attacks, if they had a bit less lag, then he'd probably be in low or mid tier in either one of those areas. But yeah, let me try to make sure that I'm not revealing too much of this thing. You can also just, like, fast forward to the end of the video whenever this is on YouTube, which should be later today if everything goes according to plan. But yeah, you can also just, like, fast forward to the end of this, or check the description, because I should have a timestamp on it. Or for each characters. So, or not description, but comment section, because it's a little bit easier for mobile users to click on, or in the comment section rather than the description for each of the timestamps. But yeah, you can also just like fast forward to the end of the video to be able to see everyone's placements. But yeah, let's go ahead and start into low tier. Mii Brawler has customizable special moves. I will be referred to each move by numbers, such as neutral special 1 for shot put. So, kind of just to avoid confusion. So, like, if you main Mii Brawler, you probably know what I'm talking about, but if you don't main Mii Brawler, or you just don't really care about Mii Brawler, then it's not that important in the first place. Anyway, Mii Brawler is a character with mediocre speed and weight. He's not too fast or too slow, and his weight's not that bad. He's kind of just average in both of those areas. So he's got a decent on-stage game. His range is extremely limited though, because he just doesn't have any projectiles except for neutral special 1, and it's a very slow projectile. It covers a decent amount of range in front of Mii Brawler, but it just isn't that great, because it's pretty slow. Very easy to avoid. Neutral special 2, I believe, is not that useful because it's just like a multi-hit move, so if it gets shielded, then it's really easy to punish, because it has a lot of in lag. And then 3 is essentially a Falcon Punch, so if you like Captain Falcon's Falcon Punch and you want your Mii to have a Falcon Punch, then that's an option. So I guess that's the usefulness of it, but it's really not that useful. Side Special 3 is probably the most useful for Side Special, as it is a command grab. 2 can be used to recover from high places, but outside of that, really, it doesn't have that much use. Down Special moves each have their own advantages and disadvantages, so I'm not really going to go over them that much. It's kind of just up to the Mii player to be able to throw out the move, and then you have to see what move it is, and then you'll know which move they're going to use. But outside of that, you just pretty much have no idea what they're going to use. And, 1 second. And then, all up specials don't really help Brawler recover that much, although 1 can be used to Chromicide. Brawler's main problems are pretty much their disadvantage states and range, which is a common characteristic of most low tiers. But yeah, they pretty much have as much range as Little Mac, but Little Mac has a little bit of advantages above them, which is why I have him a bit above Mii Brawler, but he also has his own disadvantages. So, Little Mac is a character who has steadily managed to climb his way out of the bottom of the tier list, which is pretty impressive, actually. His speed is probably something about him that's heavily underrated, as he's the 3rd fastest in ground speed behind Captain Falcon and Sonic. He is tied for 12th in airspeed with Mario, Sonic, and Inkling, and his fall speed is tied for 2nd with King Dedede and Piranha Plant. And Fox has the most has the fastest fall speed, apparently, in case anyone was wondering about that. Um, his smash attacks have super armor, which is really good for them. Because you can kind of just throw out smash attacks a lot in. If he gets them shielded, then he can be punished, but if you try to hit him while he's charging up a smash attack, he can release it, and then just go straight through it with super armor, and then get a kill potentially off of it. KO Punch is a really good kill option for Mac, as it can't be countered or shielded, but it's not that great because you can be hit out of it, and it also has a pretty limited amount of range, so people can kind of just avoid it. And then rolls and air dodges also go through it, and like spot dodges as well. His main flaw is his disadvantage, and I would kind of talk about Little Mac's disadvantage, but pretty much everyone knows that that's kind of Little Mac's main problem, is disadvantage. So I'm not really going to get into it, because it's just a very common thing. And let's go ahead and kind of, I guess I'll move up, because I didn't actually mean to move up. I don't know why I did, but I'll move up and just show that Game & Watch is there. But yeah, Charizard, he's pretty slow in the ground and in the air. He's tied for, he's pretty slow in the air, I mean, but on the ground he is tied for 9th as the fastest character. So that's not bad, but I kind of misread that. But yeah, I didn't expect Charizard to be as fast as he actually was, because he's just kind of like a heavy character. So I kind of had written off most heavies as being pretty slow, but I was kind of surprised to see Charizard as high as he was. Like, Bowser is like around 20, and Charizard is at 9, so he's pretty fast. I guess I just never realized how fast he was because I rarely play Charizard in the first place. A lot of his moves, though, are very slow and are telegraphed a lot. Although they do connect, they are pretty powerful, which is why he is up here. His recovery is also one of the better ones I've loaded here. It's probably the second or third best out of the list at the bottom here. I would say the best would probably be Jigglypuff's. Although Robin is also has a pretty good recovery, so it'd be either one of those two. But Charizard can end the stock really quickly if he does get in hits, and he's really good follow-up for Ivysaur for that reason. Like, Ivysaur might not always be able to kill, but then you can just switch over to Charizard and get a kill, because his advantage trait's really good, and Ivysaur can kind of put people into disadvantage a little bit easier than Charizard can. And it's kind of good to follow up Charizard with Squirtle, because you can either switch over to Ivysaur if you just want to play as Ivysaur and Charizard, or you can get in some combos with Squirtles. But Charizard also has utility for having the best recovery out of the Pokemon Trainer trio. But yeah, that's pretty much it for Charizard. He does kind of get outranged by sword-wielding characters, but not really, because he does have decent range on moves like Neutral Special and Slide Special, but those can also be countered and stuff like that, so there are ways around it. Robin is probably the most unique of the Fire Emblem characters, but they are also the worst Fire Emblem characters, so I guess that kind of shows what the uniqueness between Robin and like Marth, Lucina, Roy, and Chrom, like they're not that unique, but Robin's kind of different compared to them, and that kind of shows you why it's not that great to be that different from them. Robin has decent range and some decent combos as well as a decent disadvantage as long as you have all of your tomes charged, but because Robin is balanced around having the tomes, it definitely hurts Robin a lot to not have any tomes available. So like if Robin has a combo started and then has just lost Levin Sword, so like you do Slide Special to Fair and you just lost Levin Sword, it's not going to be that great of a deal because you just wasted your Arc Fire pretty much, because you're just not going to have any knockback from the Bronze Sword because it's too weak. But yeah, Robin can also just lose the ability to recover if Robin recovers too much, so that's definitely a problem as well in terms of disadvantage. Jigglypuff is the second fastest character in the air, which is really good actually, because Jigglypuff doesn't really have an up special that can send upwards. She has a lot of fast aerials as well, and they have very limited range, which is why she's probably as fast as she is, kind of to balance out the limited range. So she can combo off of like Fair into itself pretty well and just drag people off stage with combos like that, just because of how fast she is in the air. She also has rest, which is kind of just a common thing to know about, and it just kills people at like 50% for most. If you lead into it, probably around 30%. But if you just run up and rest someone, then it will probably kill around 50. Although, if your shield breaks, then she dies. Her disadvantage is really bad because of that, because you can't be in shield a lot. She also gets outranged by sword characters, so she kind of just like floats around and gets hit. She is the second lightest character in the game as well, so that means if she is hit, she's going to be hit pretty far off stage. And then her recovery is only her jumps. If she runs out of jumps, then she can't recover anymore. Well, I guess her air dodge is wall, but in most scenarios where you run out of jumps, you will not be able to air dodge back to the stage, unless you like jump underneath the stage and go from one side to the other. But yeah, she's pretty close to being a class cannon, but the glass is kind of already shattering on the cannon, so you do have a lot of good stuff with Jigglypuff, but you can just die to moves like Flare Blitz at 30% pretty easily. It's like not that common of a thing. Or not that uncommon of a thing. And now into lower mid tier, which is going to have 3 rows. I'm kind of slowly revealing this because I like the slow reveal for the stream, although on YouTube, as I said earlier, you can kind of just skip this. At the bottom's got to be Mr. Gaiden Watch. I did used to consider him to be the worst character in the game, but apparently he's got a lot of good tools and stuff that I've learned about over time. But I'm kind of always thought of Game & Watch as just being a little bit too light, because he just enters disadvantage really easily whenever he's hit, because he's another light character, and he's really easy to edgeguard as well. His moves don't really have that much range. Like, Neutral Special probably has the most range out of any of your moves, but it's also one of your slower moves. All of his moves have, like, massive amounts of in lag, except for, like, back air, up air, and, nair. So, but they still have pretty limited range on those, except for back air, I would say. His up special out of shield is frame 2, I believe, so it's one of the fastest out of shield options in the game, which is really good for him. It also starts combos, which is just up special to up air. His down air is pretty decent at landing, and then side special can be used to get a kill at any percent that's like above 20 most of the time. Because a few characters can't actually survive a 9 if they're not at the ledge at 0, but if they're around 20%, then it will most likely kill them. But yeah, he just kind of gets outranged by sword characters a lot, and then he does have Bucket to deal with projectiles, which definitely helps him out a lot in that regard, but a lot of his moves are pretty slow, so if you just keep using projectiles against Game & Watch, he's still not going to be able to get in, even if he does have his Bucket and stuff like that. Pit and Dark Pit do have differences, but they're not that too far apart. A lot of them are just like different angles and things like that. Like side special launches forward for Dark Pit, and it launches upward for Pit. So there's kind of something that's a difference between them. They kind of have decent air and ground speed, but it's not anything too spectacular. They have decent kill power as well, and they have an okay recovery, but it's one of the easiest recoveries to 2-frame. I'm pretty sure it's between them and Joker with Arsene that have the easiest recoveries to 2-frame. So characters like Falco or Wolf can just down smash and then get them off the ledge pretty easily. An interesting thing about them is that they have down special, which can reflect projectiles, but it's also kind of just a shield, and it can be hit until it's broken. But whenever it breaks, it doesn't enter them into a shield break animation. It kind of just makes them sit still for a second, and then they're out, so they can get like a free punish. So like if you Falcon Punch their shield and it breaks, Pit and Dark Pit could actually just punish it with a combo or anything like that. Which they do have decent combos, but they don't have really any kill combos. They have decent edge guarding with their arrows and like down air and fair, but they don't really have anything too spectacular there. But yeah, their disadvantage is probably the worst thing about them. But other than that, they're kind of just mediocre characters. And by disadvantage, I mean like they get outranged a lot, and if they're in the corner, they don't really have a lot of options that aren't too obvious or easy to punish. With Mewtwo has a lot of range, powerful moves, and a pretty solid recovery. Mewtwo's main problem is that they can be juggled a lot due to their lightweight and large size. Like, Mewtwo is the 10th lightest character in the game now, after the weight buff. I believe they were the 5th and tied with Fox, if I remember correctly, so they moved up 5 spaces. but it was only like 2 values, so they're still really light. Their tail has a hitbox, or not a hitbox, but a hurt box, so they can be hit on their tail as well, which just means that their hitbox is even larger. I believe Mewtwo has a larger hitbox than Ridley, but I'm not too sure on that. It might be pretty close, though. Just in terms of the amount of hurt boxes on Mewtwo. But Mewtwo does have decent damage output and can kill pretty consistently. It's just that if you get hit, then which is pretty easy to do against Mewtwo because a lot of Mewtwo's moves are pretty slow, but the ones that aren't slow kind of have limited range, so if you do get hit as Mewtwo, most of the time you will lose a stock from it. The main problem with their recovery is that it has a lot of in-lag whenever they teleport. It's not anything like Joker's up special with Arsene where they have like 30 frames of in-lag or something like that, but it still has enough in-lag to leave them open for an attack. They also don't really have that great of out of shield. Like, they kind of have like Nair out of shield, but that really doesn't cover that much range around them. And then their fastest out of shield option, I believe, is up smash, and it doesn't really hit short characters that well. And so characters like Jigglypuff and Kirby can kind of just duck underneath their shield and then get off, or get an attack. But yeah, that's pretty much it for Mewtwo. Villager is a pretty slow and small zoner, which his size kind of helps him out a little bit, but not really that much, as it means that he's kind of light, and so whenever he enters disadvantage, he kind of stays there. But his disadvantage is very similar to Isabelle's, where it's not too particularly bad, it's just that he doesn't do enough damage or knockback to get people off of him that well. His out of shield's pretty bad. His tree is okay because it is a very solid kill move if the tree grows inside of someone or is chopped down on someone. Axe is also a really good kill move. And down special with the tree planted already, some water. And it can be used to gimp people like Dr. Mario pretty easily. But outside of that, Villager's zoning tools aren't really that great. Like, you have Slide Special, which is pretty annoying to deal with, actually. And that's probably his best zoning tool, but if you just jump over it, then you will be able to avoid it, and then Villager won't be able to summon another one until it explodes. And if he's like right next to you, then he can spam Slide Special, and that's the annoying part of it. But it is pretty predictable whenever he's going to do it. Although you can't really react to it online that well, which is why I consider him to be probably the most annoying zoner, but he's definitely not one of the better zoners. Toon Link has a lot of combos at lower percents and a decent recovery. He definitely combos a lot more than the Adult Link. Yeah, I'll get into Sonic later, but yeah, Toon Link kind of just gets outranged by a lot of characters like Lucina and Marth, for example. They definitely outrange him. His projectiles are pretty slow as well, so he can't really combo off of them like Young Link. And then he doesn't have the knockback or kill power that Toon Link or that regular Link has. And then his up special kind of leaves him open to attack from above. But it's not really that bad. His down special bombs don't really save him as much as with most other characters. But he's kind of just an average character, which is kind of his main problem. And then Donkey Kong is usually rated a lot higher on tier lists and considered to be one of the better heavies. But I'd say that his disadvantage definitely holds him back from being anywhere near high tier, because he can just be hit by pretty much any spike at any percent and then die for it. There's just like not that many options for him in terms of recovery. His jump height's not that great either, and that doesn't help him out that much. If he had super armor and his up special whenever he recovered in the air, then it would definitely help him out a lot. But even on the ground, it's not that useful. His neutral is okay, but I wouldn't call it great or anything like that. He kind of just has to poke at people and then use his range to his advantage, but his range comes at the cost of being pretty slow. Although it is kind of powerful. But he also has Slide Special for burying people and shield pressure, and it's a really good shield pressure option, but it's not that consistent on getting hits because of how slow it is, and it's just really easy to avoid. Rosalina and Luma are balanced around the characters being like together, so if Luma disappears from Rosalina, she's definitely at a really large disadvantage. She has like one of the slowest fall speeds in the game, and she's also one of the lighter characters in the game. So if she gets knocked into the air without Luma there, there's not many options he has. Like, down air is really slow. Forward air has limited range, but it's kind of fast, and then back air has a bit more range and is a little bit slower. And those are pretty much her only landing options without Luma there. And even with Luma there, those are pretty much her only landing options, but they're still a lot better with Luma than just with Rosa. She also has a pretty large hitbox, so that means she gets put into disadvantage a lot. But if she does have Luma there, she has a really strong neutral because Luma can kind of just go in and do its thing, and then whenever Luma dies, Rosalina just has to play really defensively. But Rosalina and Luma can also combo off of each other pretty well. Zelda is another zoner character that's kind of in the lower mid-tier. She's pretty light and has a pretty slow fall speed, which definitely hurts her disadvantage, but her advantage is pretty good, because she's got down special being the Phantom Armor Knight, that she can kind of just summon at pretty much any time to be able to get people off of her and kind of make them have to play defensively, and then she can kind of just like run up and shield, and if they play aggressively, then she can just summon it to get in a bit of damage. Din's Fire is her side special, and it's okay for edge guarding, but it's pretty slow, so it can't really cover that many people if they're mixing up their recovery a lot. Her movement speed in general is also really slow. It's kind of something I forgot to say about Rosalina and Donkey Kong is that they also move pretty slow, which definitely holds them back. Back air and fair are pretty high risk, high reward moves, so if she does land the sweet spot, she is able to get a kill at really low percents, like around 40 to 50% for certain characters. But if she lands the sour spot, then it has no knockback or damage, so then she just gets punished, and her disadvantage doesn't help her out that much. Up special is a really good kill move though, although it does have limited range and it doesn't work at certain percents. It's still a decent kill option that can kill opponents at around 50%. So it's not exactly something that you can ignore. And then neutral special is really good for if she's getting pressured. But outside of that, she really doesn't have that many landing options. Mii Gunner and Sword Fighter, I kind of didn't really know where to put them, so I kind of put them here. Mii Gunner is a pretty solid zoner, I would say, that has a lot of good zoning tools, but it's pretty slow. The thing about Mii Gunner versus the Samuses is that Mii Gunner doesn't really have like down special, whereas Samus and Dark Samus do to help them in disadvantage. So she has to be played pretty defensively, but she doesn't have that great of defensive options. And then Mii Sword Fighter, he kind of just has the kill confirm of neutral B into up special. But if he actually didn't have that, I would probably put him in bottom tier because he's really slow, even though he does have a decent amount of range. And then I guess Chakram, which is one of his side specials, it's pretty decent at zoning, but it's still not that great of a projectile because of how slow it is. But yeah, then after that we have Samus and Dark Samus, who have a lot of good projectiles. Like, obviously Mii Gunner has very similar projectiles to them, which is why I would say Mii Gunner is not that bad of a character, but it's definitely a lower mid-tier character due to speed and disadvantage. But they play Samus and Dark Samus play like very defensively compared to most zoning characters. Like, they don't really have that many aggressive options because a lot of their melee options are slow, but their projectiles are pretty fast and can do a decent amount of damage. So they probably camp opponents more than I would say characters like Young Link would, because Young Link actually has to approach you to get combos, whereas with Samus and Dark Samus they can kind of just sit back and be able to get kills, because none of Young Link's projectiles kill at like 150%, for example, whereas with Dark Samus and Samus they have a few that would. They do have a really slow tether grab though, which isn't that great, but they can use it in combos in the air if they use Zair. And it's not that bad of a combo, actually. Their out of shield's okay as well, because of Zair, and up special out of shield is really good. But they don't really have that great of a recovery. It's a decent recovery if they can Zair, but if they can't Zair, then they can be edge guarded pretty easily. Same thing with Lucas. He's got a really solid recovery, but it's pretty easy to edge guard, especially if you've got a counter. That's the same thing with like Ness. So you can just like run off stage and counter both of their recoveries pretty easily. The differences between Lucas and Ness are a lot better, or there's like a lot more differences between them than what most characters would, or what most clone characters like. With Dr. Mario and Mario, they're not too far apart. It's just like one's slower than the other, but more powerful, and one's faster but has better combos. Whereas with Ness and Lucas, there's a lot of differences because there's a lot of changes between their moves. But I do like the fact that Lucas does have PK Freeze over PK Flash. PK Freeze is definitely a much stronger neutral special. It's probably one of the better ones in the game because it can just kill people at like 100% center stage because they can't match out of it fast enough. But if they can match out of it fast enough, then that's a different story. His combos are okay, but he's kind of just your average character. Like, he's got average range. He's kind of got slower speed. His recovery's good, but it's definitely exploitable. And his damage output's pretty average as well, which is why he's in mid tier, because he's just average, but he doesn't really have anything too special about him that would result in like moving him up or down from this spot. And then Dr. Mario, he might not be able to combo or recover as easily as Mario, but he definitely has a lot of advantages over Mario, like damage output and kill power. Like forward air kills like 80% against most characters for Dr. Mario. Down special kills around that percent as well, and is one of the best edgeguard moves in the game. So like you can just run off stage and down special people, and there's not really much they can do. It's kind of like sitting at the ledge and floating with Peach and Daisy and then just spamming there, because you kind of just have to wait for them to approach you, and if they don't approach you, then they just fall off the stage and they can't really get back. A few characters can get around it, but with Dr. Mario it's a little bit worse than them because they can float for much longer than Doc can, and it can also kill Doc sometimes, but he also has down air. Dr. Mario, or no wait, not Dr. Mario, but yeah, back to Dr. Mario though. His pill is really good for zoning, but outside of that, it's not that great of a projectile. Like, it does a decent amount of damage, but it's kind of overrated as a projectile, because it kind of lets him approach, but it just bounces a bit too high, so opponents can just kind of jump over it, even if they don't have that great of a jump. And by jump over it, I mean like jump whenever it's landing on the ground, rather than bouncing upwards, because it bounces upwards pretty high and then it goes down, and then if they jump over it while it's moving down, it's really easy to avoid. But it's pretty annoying to deal with a Doc that's just like spamming neutral special, but it's not that bad, because if you just edge guard him, then he really can't do much against you because of it. His disadvantage is one of the worst in the games. But I would say that he is probably around here, because his disadvantage is a bit better than Donkey Kong's, but his range is a little bit less than Donkey Kong's, which is kind of something that's not that great, but he does have a projectile and cape to deal with projectiles, whereas Donkey Kong doesn't really have much in that regard. And then he also has a lot of good combos compared to Donkey Kong. Like, Donkey Kong really doesn't have any combos, except maybe like falling there into rising there, maybe cargo through into some stuff, but all of his combos are usually like 1 to 2 hits, whereas with Doc, he does have a few combos that are multi-hits, like up throw, down special, and can result in kills pretty early, but they're pretty inconsistent on whether they work or not. Ridley is actually tied for 9th, like Charizard, at running speed, which really surprised me, because Ridley is supposed to be seen as like one of the worst heavies in the game, but his running speed actually makes him one of the better ones, because he can kind of just move around on the ground freely, compared to a lot of the heavies. Like, a lot of the heavies don't really have fast running speeds, so they can't deal with projectiles, so that way you can have a way to counter heavies, whereas with Ridley, he doesn't really struggle against projectiles as badly as most. King K. Rool, I would say, does the best against projectiles, because he can just reflect them with his down special, but Ridley definitely does a pretty solid job against him, and then his neutral special projectiles are really good for edge guarding. Side special is really good for edge guarding, because it can be used like Ganon side, and it also does a lot of damage on the stage and can be used to kill at higher percents. It's also a command grab, so that's definitely an advantage. Down special just does a massive amount of damage if it's connected, although it's really slow and easy to punish if it's not connected. He does a decent amount of shield pressure, actually. He has a lot of moves that can destroy shields, like, if you shield all the hits of his neutral special and then he runs up and down smashes you while you're still in shield stun, it can break your shield pretty easily. But he can also just slide special to get more damage out. But, yeah, his aerials are also okay, but the main problem with his aerials is that they're really slow and have a lot of landing lag. They don't really cover that much distance either. Like, that's kind of Ridley's main problem, is that neutral special pretty much has the most amount of range out of any of his moves, and all of the other moves just don't really cover that much distance. except maybe slide special technically, because you would drag people along the ground with it. And then up special is really good for recovering because it gives you intangibility on the wings, but it only has a few specific angles, so it's not that useful. And it doesn't really travel that far. It's pretty similar to Wolf's recovery, but it only has like 5 different angles that you can use out of it. Although if you angle it downwards, it can spike, which is kind of good for just like kamikazing. Sonic is the fastest character in the game, obviously, as he is Sonic. He's kind of known for being fast, but he plays a bit too campy for his speed, and he's kind of forced to play that way because a lot of his moves don't have that much range, so he kind of just baits opponents into trying to approach him and then hitting them. Because he can't really play aggressive because if there's projectiles, and he can get overwhelmed by projectiles pretty easily, and then he definitely has to bait out sword characters to try to approach him, because he literally cannot compete with swords at all because they just completely destroy him. Neutral Special is okay for doing damage and killing, but honestly it's not that great of a move as it has a lot of startup and end lag, so if he gets it shielded or if it's dodged, and it can actually kill him. His recovery is pretty solid, and it can be used to help him combo. Well, he does have a decent amount of combos, but like up throw to up air kills really late, and that's pretty much his only kill combo. Slide special can't be cancelled in this game, but it's still kind of a decent move for starting combos on the ground. That can do like 30%, but it's still not that great, because it's really obvious whenever Sonic's going to slide special, because if you just don't approach him, then he's most likely going to throw it out. Or he can also just slide special if he hasn't slide specialed in a while, because that's probably the move that Sonic does the most. A lot of his multi-hit moves like up tilt are also really inconsistent. Like up tilt and fair just don't really hit all of the hits, and they still haven't been fixed. Like Little Max forward tilt did get fixed, and that was one of the big moves, but it's basically like Little Max forward tilt before the patch. So now on to upper mid tier, which was kind of already leaked earlier, but I think I covered it up fast enough and didn't call attention to it. But yeah, number 49's Ice Climbers. Yeah, Sonic's aerials definitely have a lot of issues. Like up air doesn't really hit consistently, forward air doesn't hit consistently, and then down air kills Sonic first most of the time, rather than Spike, because it just doesn't have enough knockback. But yeah, Ice Climbers, they got nerfed pretty heavily. They lost one of their bigger desyncs, but they can still perform a lot of desyncs. But yeah, Sonic would definitely be a better character if they just fix that trait to him. Like, he'd probably be around here, where Ganondorf and Falco are, I would say. It's just because a lot of his moves just can't really land a lot of hits. But Sonic still camps a lot, which is definitely something that the game doesn't really favor, because a lot of rushdown characters are towards the top of the list. Like, you can't see a lot of them, but there's a lot more rushdown characters towards the top than at the bottom, like Isabelle, Villager, Toon Link, Sonic. All of the characters that require their opponents to approach them most of the time are towards the bottom. But yeah, the Ice Climbers still have a few desyncs. I thought they lost like all of their desyncs with the jump change, but they didn't. But I feel like Nintendo is still going to take out a lot of their desync combos in the future, or at least any that are completely broken and like 0 to death, like the one from the jump was. I feel like they do have a few more that haven't been found yet, but they really just lack a lot of range on the ground and air. Like Neutral Special is pretty much their only projectile, and it's not even that great of a projectile because it can just be hit away like a Gordo. And it's also really slow, so it's pretty easy to avoid. And then if Popo gets separated from Nana, then his recovery is the worst in the game. Like Little Max up special actually travels farther than Popo's recovery without Nana. And then they also have a lot of problems with their damage output when they're separated, because they will do half as much damage. So they can't really get kills as easily. And then they lose a lot of range as well. Corrin, kind of a more interesting character. I feel like Corrin's more underrated than most people, because a lot of people have Corrin like around low to low mid tier, but I would say Corrin's probably around high mid tier, because Corrin still got a lot of range on their moves. They still have a lot of really powerful combos out of like Fair, because Fair combos into itself really well, because it's basically the same launch angle as like Wolf's Fair, although it has more range, so it's a lot easier to combo. Then kind of just ladder people off the top like Mario, although their up special doesn't really connect as well, and then people fall out of their up special a lot. Um, Back air is really slow though, and it's one of their better aerials for edge guarding. It's pretty much the only one that they can use other than down air, and down air has a small chance to kill them if they use it too low to the ground. But Corrin kind of has this problem killing if they can't land aerials, or I mean not aerials, but tippers. But a lot of their tipper hitboxes were increased. Like if they did the same thing to Marth, Marth would be a much better character than where I put him. But Corrin still kind of struggles to land tippers due to their speed. Corrin's one of the slower characters, and then their recovery is not that great. It's an okay recovery, but it's pretty much like Marth and Lucina's recovery, where it can be edgeguarded pretty easily, and then if they're too far away from the ledge, they just won't make it back. But they can make it from underneath the ledge pretty easily. Their projectile is really good, though, because it's basically like ZSS's Paralyzer, although it covers a lot more area, because it's just a much larger projectile. And it's a little bit faster as well. But, yeah, now on to Luigi. I feel like Luigi's a character that's going to start getting lower in the tier list as time goes on. He still has a 0 to death, which is a very optimized 0 to death now. Like, it's probably the best combo that's been optimized in the game so far. Like, if you see a Luigi player in a tournament, they will most likely have like one stock where they have 0 to death someone, or at least landed a lot of the hits of the 0 to death, but it can be DI'd out of, which is kind of a problem. Like, Luigi doesn't have that much range, so if you DI away from him, then most of the time he will be able to escape the 0 to death. His edge guarding is not that great because his recovery is really bad. Like, it's dependent on whether he has a misfire or not, if he's going to make it back to stage in most scenarios. And even if he does get a misfire, then it can be countered, and then he will die if his misfire gets countered, because it just does so much damage back to him. But it can also be faired, just like with his normal green missile. But outside of that, his up special is really good for like shield pressure, because it kind of just destroys shields. It doesn't really break them though, so you can kind of pressure people's shields and then run up and up special them. But Luigi doesn't really pressure shields that well because he doesn't have a lot of range. He does have a decent amount of combos though, although a lot of them don't really do as well as his 0 to death, and then if he doesn't get his 0 to death to work, then it doesn't, or it's really bad for Luigi, because then he can enter disadvantage, and he has a really bad disadvantage. So, as soon as people start realizing that you can get out of his 0 to death, and then his 0 to death, or his 0 to death just gets patched in general, because they did patch his original one, so I feel like they will patch his new one, eventually, then, he will probably drop a lot in the tier list. And then he used to be able to turn invincible by down specialing off of a ledge, but I guess they patched that in the last patch. Like, I saw Elegant use it to just like run up and up special someone in a tournament, like the week before 3.1 came out, I believe, because it would just give him like intangibility, because he could use it to manipulate the startup intangibility. And then Incineroar is one of the more underrated heavy characters. He definitely struggles with projectiles because he's really slow and he struggles to approach. But if he gets in, he can actually do more damage than Ganondorf can with a lot of his moves. Like, Ganondorf's forward smash does about 30% uncharged, whereas with Incineroar's side special, if he does have, like, even just the slightest amount of revenge, it can do up to 75% just off of a side special alone. Which is kind of busted, actually, because it's also a command grab. So if he just pressures your shield a lot, and then he gets his revenge built up, then if he side specials you while you're shielding, then he can just get a free kill off of it. Incineroar just does a lot of damage in general. He doesn't really have that much range, and his recovery is really exploitable, but outside of that, he's definitely a pretty solid character. He definitely could be a lot better, though, because his recovery is just not that great. Like, he relies on side special to get him close enough to the stage for up special to work, but if he's out of side special, then he can't really get that, or he can't really get much distance from that. But yeah. Now on to Duck Hunt. Duck Hunt is a character that I thought was going to be in low tier, but he's definitely improved a lot from what I've seen. He still can combo his slide special a lot, but it's not a very consistent combo, and it kind of requires a lot of like frame perfect inputs to be able to work. are not really frame perfect, but you do have to be able to do it pretty quickly for it to work, and then people can just drop out of it as well. Especially like Shulk with Dial Swords can just get out of it by switching over to Shield Art. But, yeah, Duck Hunt does have a pretty decent amount of projectiles, but whenever it comes to close range combat, Duck Hunt just falls flat really badly. Like, he just can't really do enough damage to get people away from him. Although can be used to get people off of you in, like, panic scenarios, I would say. Because you can kind of just use it to blow yourself up and then just get out of the way. Kind of like Snake can use, Grenade out of shield to be able to get people off of him. His recovery also leaves him pretty open to attack, but it kind of travels a pretty far distance, so I would say it's a pretty solid recovery. Ganondorf is the strongest character in the game, I believe, in terms of, like, raw kill power. Like, if you ignore Incineroar with Revenge, but Ganondorf is kind of just strong consistently. A lot of his moves do the most damage out of any moves in the game. But I think he does the most knockback out of any moves. I'm not really sure on that. I feel like Ganondorf will be a character that moves up in the tier list over time. But he also has the chance to move down if people start to realize his weaknesses more. And he doesn't gain any strengths. But I feel like Ganondorf's going to start finding some combos pretty soon. And if he gets any combos that are like 2 to 3 hit combos, then it just knocks his opponent to kill percent. So, I mean, he already has a few combos with Nair that could potentially do that. But they only work at specific percents. But if you found a combo that would work consistently at lower percents and get opponents to higher percents, then he would definitely be a pretty strong character in terms of just, like, usefulness overall. But currently he just has a lot of knockback and range with his smash attacks. His recovery is really bad though, but he does have a lot of mix-up in his recovery that can help him out. Like he can down special or he can delay his up B to be able to recover pretty easily. But he's heavily dependent on his jump to be able to recover, and if he doesn't have his jump, then and his jump's not even that great, so sometimes his jump just doesn't even help him out, I guess is what I was trying to say. Falco is a character that really isn't seen that much in Ultimate, and I feel like it's mainly because he doesn't really have that much kill power. Like, he has kill power at specific percents. Like, he can do things like up tilt back air for kills at like 130% on certain characters. But if it's higher than that, then the up tilt to back air just doesn't work anymore, and then he just can't do anything with it. So it's definitely a pretty big weakness to not have a lot of consistent ways to kill. His aerials don't always hit all of the hits, like, forward air doesn't really hit all of the hits consistently, so it's not that great for edge guarding or, like, comboing in general. Up special looks kind of iffy because it is pretty easy to punish in the air because it does have a lot of startup, but it is a multi-hit, so I do like that more than Fox's, because if you hit somebody with up special, then you can kind of just drag them into the stage a little bit better than you can with Fox's, which definitely helps him out a lot. But if you sit out of his up special, or not out of his up special, but out of his jump, then it's not that great. He does have one of the highest jump heights in the game. I'm pretty sure he actually does have the highest full hop and short hop, so it definitely helps him out in terms of, like, up throw combos. So he can kill off the top pretty easily on stages like Battlefield, or just stages with platforms in general. But if he's playing on a stage like Final Destination, he kind of requires on his kill setups and like kill combos to be able to kill, and if they don't work, then he has to kind of fish for down tilt, which doesn't really have that much range, but it can kill at like 150, because it sends directly upwards for some reason. But not too many characters can actually challenge Falco in the air, because Falco does have a lot of good moves in the air, like neutral air and down air for combos. Oh hey, Old Man Dan. But yeah, then on to Cloud. Cloud's kind of a rushdown character that rewards spacing his moves a lot. So if you actually space with Cloud, compared to someone like Sonic, if you space more with him, then characters won't be able to punish you as much. But Cloud's aerials are still really laggy. His up special actually travels less distance than Simon and Richter's if he doesn't have limits, so his recovery is not that great without limit. And then if he does use his limit on his up special, then he doesn't have a lot of, or then he can't use limit to kill. But yeah, I have been working on this tier list for the last few days, so finally got it finished today, so I'm kind of just going over it on stream. But yeah, overall, I would say Cloud could be a lot better, but his edge guarding is not that great because of his recovery. I mean, he can use fair and down air to be able to get a few spikes, but if he overextends his edge guarding, then he kind of can't get back to stage unless he gets limit off stage, and even then that's pretty iffy. I'm actually not a tournament player, but I have thought about going into tournament. But there's not really many local tournaments in my area. Like, the closest local tournament would be probably 2 hours away from where I live, so I wouldn't be able to attend any tournaments unless I had the date planned and stuff like that. So I can't really go to tournaments consistently. Oh yeah, Greninja's gonna be towards the top of high tier. I don't really know what number he is off the top of my head, but I know that he is towards the top on that. Yeah, I have a lot of practice in the game. I have, actually let me check how much I have in the game, because I've spent a lot of time playing the game just in my free time. Like, I have 930 hours in the game, so I do have a bit of practice in the game. It's just I can't really play a lot of people, because pretty much nobody that I know plays Smash Brothers. And most of the ones that I do know that play it, they most likely just stop playing because I usually beat them at it. Like, I've played a lot of friends on my Switch, just meeting up with them and then them wanting to play, but they just don't really feel like comfortable playing me because I just practice the game so much that they don't really like to lose that much. Like, I have one friend who plays much more Mortal Kombat than Smash, and he doesn't really like the game anymore because he's just not used to the mechanics. But I've actually taught someone how to play the game whenever Joker first released, and kind of helped them out, and then they started to play Smash. So I'm hoping to play with them more next year, but right now I believe they're in Cuba, so I can't really play with them, because I don't have internet access. But that would be pretty much the only person I can play. And I still do viewer battles every once in a while to be able to get in practice, but I don't really play that much. Or at least as much as I used to, because I've been working on streaming stuff a lot now. But when the game first came out, I played it pretty much every day, for about 10 to 15 hours a day. So that's why I have so much playtime in it built up. But yeah, now on to Lucario. Lucario has the aura mechanic, which is really good for him, but it like increases his range. It obviously makes it where he dies pretty quickly, because at 120%, which is where the aura maxes, he's going to have the most range, which is something he really struggles with without aura, but he will die much faster because he's a pretty average weight character and he's kind of slow on the ground, so he can't really run away from opponents. So characters like Marth can just land tippers on him pretty easily and then knock him off stage at 120%. There's not much you can do. He does have decent zoning ability with his neutral special, but it's pretty slow on the ground. But it can cover a lot of options when recovering. And then his recovery is really good whenever he's got aura, but outside of that, it's pretty lackluster whenever he doesn't have aura. And then I would say his moveset in general definitely could use a lot of buffing without aura, because it just doesn't have enough range to be able to save him from scenarios where he gets damaged. But he does kind of want to be damaged to get aura, but you don't want to be at 120% with max aura, because then that means that you won't be able to hold on to it for that long. And then he really struggles against characters with projectiles, like the next characters being Simon and Richter, which the only difference between the two is the holy water. And I would actually say that Simon is probably better than Richter in that regard, because Simon can set off bombs. So if Link throws out the remote bomb, then Simon can hit it with holy water and be able to counter it. And then Link loses his setup. So he's really good at dismantling things like that, but obviously he can't hit red Pikmin, which is kind of a pretty good advantage, because those do the second most amount of damage to people from Olimar if they're separated from them, so it's really good for killing them. But outside of that, I would say Simon is probably better overall, but Richter's usually rated as better. Outside of that, they really have no differences. They have a lot of good projectiles. They probably have the best in the game, just in terms of, like, utility, but their projectiles just individually aren't as great as something like a Turnip from Peach and Daisy. But they do have the best, like, spread, I would say. And then they do have a pretty large amount of range using their width, but it's pretty slow. So they can't really approach people. Or if people approach them, I mean, then they can't really stop them from getting off without using like forward tilt, which forward tilt has range in front of them, but if they jump over forward tilt, then he can get attacked, or Simon and Richter can get attacked. And then if you just neutral air Simon and Richter, that's probably their best option to get people off of them, but it still has pretty limited range up close. They can't really cover the angle that Axe is thrown in front of them, so that's a really good spot to attack them from without having Axe. So if they've already thrown Axe and you've avoided it, then if you hit them from that angle, it's really not an angle that most people would attack from, so it's pretty hard to predict if you're going to attack from that angle, and they don't really have that many options to cover it quickly. Except for like neutral air, but that's still a pretty slow option. Bayonetta has a lot of problems with range on her basic attacks, and her smash attacks are pretty laggy. So basically, like all of her tilts, her aerials, and like dash attack and jab, they all have pretty limited range, but they can combo pretty well out of just like if you get one hit with Bayonetta, you'll probably get another 3 or something like that, just because of how much combo potential she has just off of one move. Her moves like forward smash and down smash, they do cover a lot of range, but they cover it very slowly. So it's pretty easy to predict whenever Bayonetta's going to like forward smash because they have a lot of startup and end lag. So if they are shielded, then there's not much that she can do to not be punished in that scenario. Down smash did get kind of buffed to where it stays out longer, so it's a better spike, but down air is probably still the best spike that she has, although it is kind of a suicide spike, so you probably won't be able to get back to stage if you do perform it. Her recovery is pretty good, though. It's probably one of the better ones in the game, but she can't recover for free in this game like she could in Smash 4, which definitely hurts her out a lot, because her recovery doesn't really cover that many options. Like, if she slide specials, there's a lot of ways to punish that, but then she can up special afterwards still. So she kind of has to mix up how she does the order of slide special, up special, and jump to be able to recover, and if she keeps doing the same one, then it's really easy to punish. But it's not like I'm tiering her based on comparing her to herself in Smash 4, because if that were the case, then she would be in the bottom 5. Because not that many characters could compete with her in Smash 4. I would say, like, Cloud probably could, but outside of him, just not that many people could in that game, just because of how broken she was. But in this game, she's much more balanced, but she definitely could be a lot stronger. Not that many people have played Bayonetta just because of how bad the nerfs were between Smash 4 and Ultimate, but I feel like now would probably be a good time to pick her back up. Because I feel like she's kind of the same in this patch as she was in Smash 4, except a lot of her moves just don't work. Like, up special and side special just don't combo as well. So she still can do Bayonetta combos, they just don't kill as easily. So you have to knock opponents to higher percents, but she still plays pretty much the exact same as in Smash 4. You just can't run around for free. Olimar definitely got hit the hardest out of all of the nerfs. Dropping him from the top 5 in my S tier to being in high mid tier at about 38 is the number that I have him ranked at. Up smash out of shield was definitely one of his best options and one of the best out of shield options in the game because it could lead into combos or it could be used to pressure your opponent's shields in general. But now he's pretty much lost that option entirely. Forward smash can't be used as easily anymore. You can't just throw it out to be able to outrange people anymore. Fair and back air, like all of his aerials are still decent except for neutral air. All of his moves that had Pikmin got nerfed pretty badly though, just by not being able to be followed up out of an up smash. Because now they just won't see that much use unless he's trying to space. And then all of the moves that don't have Pikmin are still too laggy for Olimar to use consistently. So that's kind of the problem with balancing Olimar the way that Nintendo did. So they made it where a lot of his Pikmin moves were balanced, but he kind of needed the Pikmin moves to be unbalanced. Like he needed up smash to be unsafe or to be safe on shield, because all of his options that are safe on shield, that are like up tilt or like neutral air out of shield, they just don't cover that much range, or they still might not be that safe on shield. Like forward tilt out of shield, it's not that safe on shield, or not out of shield, but just forward tilt in general, it's not that safe on shield. And that's pretty much his only other forward kill option, and it doesn't even kill until about 100% or higher than that most of the time, depending on the character. But yeah, Olimar, he did need some nerfs, I would say, because there was some stuff that was a bit unbalanced, but I think they kind of nerfed him a bit too hard in this patch. And then his disadvantage was made even worse with the recovery change. Because he does have probably the worst disadvantage in the game, as he's just so light that you can hit him off stage once, and then if he up specials, then you can hit him off stage out of the up special pretty easily. Especially if he has no Pikmin, which most of the time he will, so that way he gets more mobility. But now he can't really up special as much as he used to be able to without just dropping instantly. So that definitely hurt him a lot. Meta Knight is another Rushion character that uses his speed to approach opponents and his sword to hit them from pretty small distance actually, as his sword is one of the smallest ones in the game. So it doesn't really offer that much range. He probably has about the same amount of range as Kirby actually. But he has a lot of good high and top tier character matchups due to his juggling, because he can just juggle people pretty much infinitely. Because up air is insanely fast, and up special can kill off the top pretty easily. So if he does get a juggle started, then most enemies won't be able to escape them. But he also gets juggled kind of easily as well, because his range is pretty limited, so he doesn't really have that many landing options. Like if he tries to down air to get out of a combo, then you can avoid it pretty easily just because of how fast it is and how much range it adds. Like, it will just be there for a second and then be gone, and it won't really affect that many people. Although neutral air is probably the best move to get out of combos, or tornado. All of his specials still put him into a bad spot off stage, because if he uses any special off stage and he doesn't touch the ground, then he will be in free fall, which definitely hurts him a lot more than it actually should. And then slide special is still an okay move. Like, it's a really good kill option if your opponent's playing pretty aggressively, but if they're playing defensively, then it's really easy to punish. And then his air movement is pretty slow, so he kind of gets juggled pretty badly. Arlo, I already kind of said that from his, like, range and stuff like that, but the main reason he gets juggled badly is because of his slow airspeed and his lightweight. Guess I probably should have said that whenever I was talking about him getting juggled. Yeah, same thing with King Dedede, he gets juggled pretty badly, but he still has a lot of good matchups against top tier characters. Like, I know in the last patch he had a pretty good matchup against Peach and Daisy, who I rated as the best characters in the game in the last tier list, but he still kind of maintains that. His Gordos are still probably one of the best projectiles in the game, although they don't have priority over anything. And so if they're hit back at Dedede, then he can take damage. But Dedede can really mix up his Gordos with his hammer being able to be angling that, and then also being able to absorb the Gordos is really good for mixing up his approach options, because he can actually approach opponents using Gordos in this game compared to previous Smash games, which definitely help him out a lot, because he kind of requires himself to be somewhat near his opponent to be able to do damage, as if he just uses Gordos, they can be hit back, as I said earlier, but if he can get in, then he can use his hammer's range to be able to cover a lot of options, because his hammer is actually really fast. Like, forward air is really fast, neutral air is pretty fast, back air is kind of slow, but it has enough knockback to kind of make up for its speed, I would say, and then down air is really good for spiking, and up air is really good for juggling, but he can't really juggle that well because of his slow air speed. And he's pretty much just the easiest character in the game to combo in, like, a regular match. Like, I would say Falco's probably the easiest one to combo in training mode, just because of his weight and speed. That's why I usually practice against Falcon, or Captain Falcon in training mode. But in an actual game, Dedede really doesn't have that many options to escape combos, except maybe neutral air, but that still has pretty limited range, and it can be baited out and punished because it does have a decent amount of ending lag and landing lag in the air. But yeah, his range is pretty ridiculous and kind of underrated. Like, forward tilt covers about the same amount of distance as Simon and Richter's forward tilt, and does a lot more damage. Jab is able to kill and has about the same amount of range. It kills at about 100 on the second platform of Battlefield for most characters. So he definitely has a lot of range, but his speed on the ground and in the air kind of just holds him back. Because if he actually was a little bit faster, he'd probably be a pretty high tier character. He used to have chain grabs and stuff like that in previous games, which is why he was kind of higher in the tier list in those games, but in this game there are no chain grabs, so he doesn't really have that option. But he does kind of have a bit of grab combos like down throw fair, and then he can kind of re-grab off of that. but it's kind of reaction based for that combo. Wii Fit Trainer is a pretty solid, I believe, rushdown character. I really don't know if Wii Fit Trainer is a zoner or a rushdown character because they can be played in either way. Like, Wii Fit Trainer can use projectiles like Side Special and Neutral Special to zone, but it's not that effective at zoning. It's mainly useful for edge guarding, I would say, and Side Special is probably a lot better than Neutral Special at doing that because Side Special has a lot of angles you can do, especially if you cancel it. Um, Side Special is also used to spike opponents sometimes, but it has a really strange spike hitbox, so I rarely use it for that. I would much rather use down air in that scenario. Wii Fit Trainer has a lot of combos from like 0 to 70% using deep breathing and neutral air, which is actually kind of insane because a lot of characters don't really have that kind of power out of their combos. The only characters I would say that do are like Ken and Ryu, and that's kind of because they can cancel their moves. But Wii Fit Trainer definitely has a really strong combo game, even though it does have limited range. So that's why I put Wii Fit Trainer right next to Ryu. It's because they both have pretty much an equal amount of combo game. But Wii Fit Trainer does have a more consistent recovery, and I would say that she probably can edgeguard a bit better than Ryu. Ryu is able to get more kill confirms at Wii Fit Trainer, and is able to approach a bit easier. Like, Ryu's a pretty solid rushdown character with decent combos, but the main problem is his lack of range. Same thing with Wii Fit Trainer. But he also has a little bit more stronger kill confirms, like Jab and 2 Shoryuken. Works for both Ken and Ryu, and for Ryu it's just a little bit weaker than Ken, I believe, and kills a little bit later, but it's still pretty solid. Side Special is definitely something that holds Ryu back compared to Ken, and that's why they're in two different tiers. Side Special basically forces Ryu to be open for attack unless he does a command input Side Special for only one hit, in which case then he can get out of it. But Side Special, just if you do side and B, if it gets shielded, then it leaves him open to attack pretty easily. Hadouken's pretty good for zoning. For Ken and Ryu, it's definitely something that helps them approach, but they still don't have the best neutral. Especially Ryu, because Ryu doesn't really have any moves that can shield pressure like Ken does. And then they both struggle with swords, but I would say Ryu does a little bit more than Ken, because Ken has a few options to get out of, or to actually counter swords, whereas Ryu, his command inputs don't really give him that many options. Like, the Hadouken, that's the red Hadouken that I cannot pronounce the name of, but it's basically the large red fireball Hadouken that he can summon is much better than the regular Hadouken. But it still doesn't give him that much of an advantage over Ken or anything. Where Ken has moves like Inazuma Kick that are used to pretty much just instantly destroy shields. Captain Falcon is going to be the character that I put in high mid tier at the top, because he is the second fastest character on the ground. I actually thought he was a pretty slow character, but he is actually one of the faster ones. He does have a pretty limited range like Ken and Ryu do, but his knee works a lot better at killing. In this patch especially, he can hit people without even having to face them, so he can just run up to somebody and then backflip into knee while landing next to them, and it will be able to connect, which can allow him to get reverse knees, which has its uses. Like, obviously, you can try to knee someone as you're landing from, like, the top right of the stage and then knock them into the blast zone, and then expect to be sent in the opposite direction. But his edge guarding is leagues better than Ken and Ryu both, as he's got, like, down air, he's got side special, he's got knee, neutral air is really good for edge guarding, and so is back air. Pretty much everything but up air is useful for edge guarding for Captain Falcon, and even up air still has its uses as it can combo into up special for an edge guard. But his recovery is not that great. It's a little bit better than Ryu's, which is also why he's a little bit above Ryu, but it's still not one of the better ones in the game. He does have a few mix-up options, but it's not really that great of a mix-up. Like, he can do Falcon Kick into up special and still make it back to stage if he's in the top right corner, but that's pretty much his much as he can get in terms of mix-up, like maybe Side Special. But Side Special really doesn't offer that much range. I used to think that Ganondorf was actually a little bit better than Falcon, but currently I don't see him as better because Falcon can get a lot more combos and damage output than Ganondorf can consistently. Because Ganondorf kind of requires our opponent to be red, so if Ganondorf gets a read and he has a download on his opponent and can just pretty much predict all of their movements, then he would definitely be better than Captain Falcon. But if he can't get any reads, then Captain Falcon's just a lot more consistent, pretty much. But they both struggle with projectiles, and Captain Falcon's smash attacks definitely suffer from the lack of range compared to Ganondorf's, but they're still not that bad as they're pretty quick, whereas Ganondorf's are really slow. And then moves like down smash are just insanely fast for Captain Falcon. I don't really understand why it's as fast as it is, but it's kind of safe on shield against certain characters, which is actually kind of broken and pretty underrated. I kind of have a secondary Falcon because I do like his playstyle in this game, but a lot of his moves don't really work the same way they did in Smash 4, which is something I don't really like. As in Smash 4, he was able to combo a lot more freely, whereas in this game, because there's pretty much no hits done at any percent, he can't really combo as well. But yeah, now on to high tier, which is going to be here. Hopefully I didn't leak characters in top tier there. Top tier is basically my top 10, so that's why I haven't really been able to show them yet. But yeah, now on to high tier. I have Yoshi at the bottom, and this music kind of came in at the right time for that, but Yoshi does have the fastest airspeed, although his ground speed is decent, but it's not anywhere near his airspeed. I believe he's slower than Bowser, potentially, on the ground, but I'm not really sure on that. I'd have to check that. I probably should have made a note of that, but Bowser's actually ranked 19th overall in ground and airspeed, whereas Yoshi's ranked in number 1 on airspeed, but I'm not really sure of its ground speed. His tilts on the ground do have pretty limited range, but they do allow him to combo into his aerials pretty nicely. Like, he can do up tilt, up air, and then if he lands the up special, which just has a random chance to land or not pretty much if your opponent DIs in the correct way, and you also line up the shot correctly, then you can get a kill off of it. But it also depends on the opponent as well. If it's a character that's pretty heavy like Bowser, then it won't work on them. His juggling is okay due to up air, but his up air doesn't really hit consistently because it's got a strange hitbox. Up tilt also has a weird hitbox, and so does forward tilt, but they both aren't really that bad of options. Up tilt can pretty much only be hit on people if they land on top of him. Like, I'm pretty sure up tilt doesn't even hit Ganondorf if he's just standing right next to Yoshi consistently, which is kind of bad, because if Yoshi tries to get a combo started off of up tilt, then it doesn't really work as well. But forward tilt pretty much launches in the same angle as up tilt, so it works a bit better. Yoshi also kind of suffers from a pretty lightweight and bad range, because Yoshi kind of just gets shut down by sword characters. Like, Roy and Chrom definitely destroy Yoshi, and I actually need to put Chrom above Roy. And I'll get into why I do that later, but yeah, Yoshi definitely struggles against him, and just any character with range. Like, I would say Yoshi has a pretty bad matchup against Wolf, for example, just because Wolf is able to outrange Yoshi on the ground, and then beat out most of its air options. Although, a lot of characters, like, pretty much all the characters in lower, mid-tier or lower just get destroyed by Yoshi in the air because they can't really challenge him due to his airspeed. Yeah, now on to Bowser. Bowser is the 19th fastest character in the game. He's actually faster than both Marth and Lucina, which is something I didn't know because they're ranked at number 20, so he's only one spot faster, but it definitely shows in the game. A lot of his moves don't really have that much range, but if he does land them, they do hit pretty strong. Like, I believe his forward smash kills a little bit faster than Ganondorf's does, but not by much, and it also depends on the situation. But it does have a bit more lag than Ganondorf's. Down special can break shields. Pretty much all of his moves can break shields if they've been slightly pressured by any move. And, I guess Yoshi's down special can also break shields a bit, but it depends on how much pressure the shield's already been through. Because it doesn't break shields if it hits that full shield. Whereas with Bowser's down special, it actually will Bowser actually has a pretty surprising amount of combos, like Nair into back air, which can actually kill opponents at about 70% on stages like Kalos Pokemon League. But it kind of depends on the character as well, and then Nair has a really inconsistent launch angle from what I've seen. So if you get the right angle, then you can land back air and get the kill there, but it's not that consistent. His out of shield options aren't that great. Like, special out of shield's okay, but it's pretty overrated, as it doesn't really cover that much area above Bowser. It just kind of covers the area right next to him. So if characters just like keep short hop nairing his shield, like if Roy is just sitting on Bowser's shield and just short hop nairing, then Bowser really doesn't have much he can do in that scenario. Because a lot of his moves just get beat out by Roy's nair. Because they're so slow. Bowser's recovery is okay, but it's really exploitable. Like, it's probably one of the better recoveries in the game, but he can be down-aired by characters like Captain Falcon and Ganondorf really easily. Same thing with characters that just have swords that down air, like Marth, Lucina, Roy, and Chrom. Marth has identical values in movement stats such as weight and speed to Lucina, so they would seem pretty similar, but Marth's sword has a tipper, which basically just means that the tip of his sword does more damage than the body, so he has to land the tip of his sword to be able to get kills or just do pretty significant amounts of damage, because just the sour spots, they kind of combo, but they aren't really that great of combos, and they don't really have that much knockback or hit stun, so they can be punished pretty easily. Let me see here. So, Marth does kill a lot faster than Lucina. Like, Marth's forward smash can kill opponents at 40%, while Lucina's kill them at about like 70% in comparison. So if Marth could actually have a larger tipper, or if he was able to hit tippers more consistently, he would probably be the best character in the game, by far, because he'd basically be like Lucina if she could shield pressure opponents stronger, did higher damage, killed them faster, and could edgeguard them better, because his down air hits harder than Lucina's does. But he does require a lot of spacing, whereas with Lucina you don't really have to worry about spacing as much, but it's still pretty important. His recovery is the exact same as Lucina's, and very similar to Roy's, except a little bit faster. It's kind of easy to edgeguard, and if it does get edgeguarded, then he will die, but if he doesn't get edgeguarded, then most time he can make it back to stage. So that means he has a really good matchup against characters like Fox, who can't really edgeguard him that well, or like Wario, for example. Or I guess Wario edgeguards a little bit better than Fox, so maybe a character like, Luigi, for example, because he doesn't really have that great of edgeguards. I do think Piranha Plant's probably that low due to his, frame data. He's just incredibly slow, and he just doesn't really have that much range except for down special, which is really slow and predictable. And then his damage output's pretty bad as well, except for, like, slide special, because he can kind of combo into slide special using, like, a grab. But it's pretty easy to escape, and if it gets reflected, then it's pretty much useless for Piranha Plant. And then his edge guarding's pretty bad, and his on-stage is pretty bad as well. But yeah, it's based on tournament level play. It's not really based on just like casual play. I could definitely see Piranha Plant being a pretty strong casual character if stages had hazards. And I would say the best like casual character, at least the one that I find the most luck in, is Captain Falcon. But a lot of characters who are down here would be a lot better on casual stages because they wouldn't have to worry about walk-offs potentially. Or they wouldn't have to worry about bottom blast zones and would have to worry about walk-offs. Like, if Dr. Mario played on a stage that had walk-offs, then he'd be much better. Because he could just kill people at, like, 20% with back throw. But because he has to worry about the blast zone, he has to play pretty safely. But yeah, if you have anything to say, I could move Piranha Plant around. Like, I'm here to kind of take advice. That's kind of why I'm live streaming it, but if you have, like, some kind of an argument about moving around, I don't mind moving him, like, from here to, like, here or something like that, if I'm convinced, but I don't see him jumping anywhere from, like, here to here that easily. Because he just has too slow of moves, and he gets beat out by a lot of characters in top tier, and also high tier. Like, pretty much all high tier characters have a winning matchup or an even matchup against Piranha Plant, and so do most mid tiers. But he does beat a few of the characters in low tier. But yeah, back on to high tier. So the next character is going to be Mario. Mario's probably the best like beginner character in the game. Yeah, Piranha Plant is a really good joke character, kind of, because he's just not that weak. Like, Pichu was the joke character in Melee because Pichu just didn't have that strong of moves and damaged itself a bit too much to be that useful, because it would just mean that Pichu went into disadvantage a lot, which kind of happens in this game now, but Pichu still has a little bit of consistent hitboxes in this game compared to Melee. Whereas with Piranha Plant just doesn't do that much damage or kill as easily as Pichu does. Or even a character like Wii Fit Trainer kills a little bit more consistently than Piranha Plant does. And I would consider Wii Fit Trainer to be kind of a joke character. Well, I guess not really, because the people that made Wii Fit actually requested Wii Fit Trainer be put into the game to Sakurai, and then they also apparently said that they wanted Wii Fit to have a face. That's why we have this Wii Fit Trainer now instead of the Smash 4 Wii Fit Trainer model. Which I think the weirdest model in Smash 4 has to be Ryu's model, because it just looks so strange compared to the new Ryu model. Like, every time that I watch a Smash 4 video and see a Ryu, it always just is weird to me. And even like the amiibo for Ryu looks completely different from the model in Ultimate. But yeah, Mario is definitely the best beginner character to pick up because he rewards learning stuff at lower levels. Like, if you learn kind of the basics of Smash, then Mario's a pretty solid character. He'd probably be around here if you just learn the basics. And then he also rewards you for learning more advanced techniques, like edge guarding. Or I wouldn't really consider edge guarding to be an advanced technique, but let's see, dash dancing would be a pretty advanced technique that Mario's definitely pretty solid at, in tech chasing. His cape allows him to gimp recoveries pretty easily, and then so does his down special. He definitely has a big problem against sword characters because of his range, but he's kind of fast enough to be able to approach him pretty consistently. But his approaching isn't that great because he can mainly just do dash attack or forward tilt. Both of those options are really slow and really easy to punish. So he kind of has to approach from the air. Which he does have landing down air, which is a combo starter, but it's still not that great of an option. But yeah, Mario kind of also has a pretty gimpable recovery himself, if you have a sword, basically, or if you have some kind of a decent edge guarding ability. Like, I would say Ivysaur and Rob have a pretty good chance to be able to get Mario with their down air, because it can hit through the stage. But outside of that, I would say Mario's still a really good character in terms of just overall ability. Although he doesn't really have anything too special about him. He's kind of just like the average mid or average high tier character, which is why he's so high up. He doesn't really have anything that's too strong about him, but he also isn't really weak in too many areas. Squirtle is basically like Mario, except he's a little bit smaller and harder to hit, which is kind of good, but that also means that he enters disadvantage a lot more frequently, and he also has a little bit less range. He does have a little bit stronger combos than Mario does. Like, his up air into up special works a little bit more consistently than Mario's does. Although Mario also has up air to fair at certain percents, which is a little bit better than Squirtle's. Squirtle's a really good Pokemon to follow up Charizard, as if you lose a stock with Charizard, then Squirtle's can land combos at pretty much any percent to kind of give advantage to the Ivysaur, which is going to be the next swap in, and then Ivysaur has arguably the best advantage out of all of the Pokemon Trainer Pokemon, so then Ivysaur can kind of just take over from there. But Ivysaur switching into or out of Squirtle isn't really that great of a change, as it's not that okay, so I'm actually going to read this real fast, so I'm no expert on him, but he's definitely underrated. He has a good anti-air game. It's basically a mind game character. He forces people into uncomfortable situations with down B and side B, too. His aerials are more oriented as anti-airs as well. For edge guarding, it's one of the biggest strengths. If anything, he's just does it differently from, say, Meta Knight. Yeah, his down special is kind of decent at edge guarding, but it's kind of easy to avoid as well if you have an air dodge and still have a decent recovery. Like, he can definitely force opponents like Mario and Dr. Mario to be able to miss the ledge, but characters like King K. Rool or Peach and Daisy how to just avoid Piranha Plant altogether. And his anti-air is okay with like Patooey and Neutral Air, but they don't really have that much range and they have a lot of startup, so he can be punished as well. But yeah, for now I would say I kind of just have went with a general consensus that Piranha Plant's usually rated at either the bottom of the tier list or near the bottom. But for now, I kind of just need to play as him more, I guess. Because I do have a bit of practice as Piranha Plant, but I guess I haven't played as him enough. Because I'm not really a Piranha Plant main or anything. But I would say he's probably around there. If not, then he might be around where Kirby is. But I wouldn't say he's anywhere in like mid-tier or high-tier. But yeah, I guess the next character going to be Squirtle. Yeah, I would say every character is probably somewhat viable in some way, except maybe some of the bottom tiers. And some of the mid-tier characters, like I would say Luke is probably, or he's pretty viable, but I would say the Pits aren't really that viable, except maybe Dark Pit, because his side special works a little bit better than Pits does at killing. And then Piranha Plant's used, I mean not Piranha Plant, but Mr. Game & Watch is used a lot in competitive, even though I consider him to be about here. A lot of people consider him to be here, but I just don't really see it. And I've kind of already said why I've thought on Mr. Game & Watch earlier. Which is basically that he's a little bit too light and he doesn't really have fast moves. So he can be put into disadvantage a lot, and he really struggles to get out of it. And his edge guarding's okay with like neutral special and down air, but it's really not that great. But yeah, I guess now back onto Squirtle, I kind of was mentioning the fact that Squirtle isn't really that great of a follow-up, or Ivysaur is not that great of a follow-up to Squirtle, because Squirtle is a little bit better at approaching than Ivysaur, although Ivysaur does have side special to help its approach, whereas Squirtle's much faster, but you can pretty much use Squirtle and Ivysaur interchangeably, because they each have their own advantages and disadvantages, so I guess he's not really that bad, but like Squirtle obviously has the ability to be able to combo, and he's a little bit safer at avoiding projectiles and stuff like that, where Ivysaur, he's able to get higher damage combos more easily, just off of a few hits, and its edge guarding is a little bit better than Squirtle. Because Squirtle just doesn't have enough knockback to kill, really. Whereas Ivysaur kind of does, but I would say Charizard's definitely the best in the trio in that regard. And then Diddy Kong was actually added into the game last patch, apparently. So I would say he was pretty much irrelevant in Smash before this patch, but they actually allowed him to recover, which is definitely something to help him out. And then they allowed his combo game to be basically as good as it was in the last game. Or it's not really to the same extent, because Banana doesn't work the same way. So he can't really Banana out of shield as easily, which was definitely something that made Diddy Kong a very strong opponent in Smash 4. But now he can at least get decent combos without having to resort to Banana, and up smash actually kills opponents now. So Diddy Kong can actually use decent combos to be able to kill opponents. I would say he probably got buffed the best out of any character in the last patch, because he went from being about here to up here. Whereas with Ken and Ryu, I say they went from being around here to around here. So they did get buffed, and they did get a lot stronger moves, but I would say Diddy Kong probably made the larger jump in the tier list from the buff. Diddy Kong still kind of has problems with ranged opponents like Chrom and Roy, because he just doesn't have that much range of his own. And then he can still be somewhat edge guarding as his up special does have a bit of a startup. But I'd say he probably should be moving up in the tier list now that he's actually gotten a lot of the buffs that he does. Although I don't think Zero's planning on going into any tournaments soon, and definitely not with Diddy Kong, so I don't really know what's going to happen to him yet, but I could see him moving up for sure. And then Sheik was a character I think is probably underrated, but Sheik has a lot of consistent combos that work from about like 0 to 50, and they do about the same amount of damage. Sheik obviously has to win neutral a lot, which is her main problem now, but I would say Peach and Daisy also have to win neutral a lot more now, which definitely hurt them, but obviously Sheik's going to be a lighter character than them, and have a much worse disadvantage because Sheik doesn't really have access to float, and up special doesn't really cover that much distance because it's probably the worst teleport in the game, although I'd have to test all the teleport recoveries. I believe it travels the least amount of distance, although it is pretty fast. It's kind of the advantage of it. But it also has a hitbox as well, which definitely puts it above a character like Palutena's up special. But Sheik's incredibly fast on the ground, can cover a lot of distance with like needles and side special, which is like the little grenade. Although apparently you can catch a grenade. I've never seen anyone do it, but you can apparently catch it and throw it back at Sheik. But it also can be reflected, so that's kind of a disadvantage to Sheik. Sheik pretty much just has to win neutral all the time to be able to get into advantage, because if she enters disadvantage, then she really starts to crumble, because she can't really do enough damage output to get her opponents away from her. But her knockback is okay at doing that. It's just that they can just get straight back in and then keep attacking Sheik and then edgeguard Sheik eventually. But yeah, Ken, oops, I actually didn't mean to move Ike. I think I moved him up a bit. Let me check. So yeah, I accidentally moved him down, but let's put him back to there. It's okay. So, Ike, he's still pretty much the same character as he was from the beginning of Ultimate. Like, he really hasn't changed that much, which is not that great because, everyone's kind of changing around him, but Ike's kind of remaining the same. His out-of-shield options are still pretty bad, and his defensive options in general. Unless he's getting a, approach and he's already ready for the approach. So if he gets approached by a character like Youngling who can throw in a lot of projectiles and then approach, then Ike really doesn't have much in the way to combat that. Nair still combos into pretty much all of Ike's aerials and still is really good for, getting kill combos and things like that. But, Ike still kind of is, or hold on a second. Or actually, I should be going over Ken first. Let me just go back to Ken, because I kind of skipped everyone, because I moved Ike and then kind of started talking about him. But it's actually on Ken, so Ken is a very strong rush-on character that is basically the same thing as Ryu, although a lot of his command inputs do help him out a lot, which I can only pronounce Inazuma Kick. The other one's initials are NOG and OMG, but they're basically just roundhouse kicks, so they do have a pretty limited amount of range, but they can kind of be used to combo. Inazuma Kick is really useful for shield pressuring because it does a lot of shield damage. And then Ken's kill confirms that Ryu has work a lot stronger on Ken, because he can do like jab, jab, up special, or just Shoryuken. Whereas with Ryu, he can't really do 2 jabs consistently. And then I believe Ken's Shoryuken is a little bit stronger than Ryu's, but I really don't know too many of the differences between the two, other than like a lot of their moves launch at different angles and stuff like that. But like strong up tilt launches differently for Ken than it does for Ryu. I'm pretty sure that's kind of like how far the differences go between them. So there is a lot of differences, but I would say Ken's probably a little bit stronger. Ken and Ryu both suffer from the lack of range, and then they also don't really have that great of out of shield or defensive options in general. Like, I guess down special could be used for a defensive option, but it's still really predictable, and then you can be grabbed out of it, or people can just jab you twice to get you out of it and then combo off of it. So it's still not that useful of a move, but it could be used for approaching, I guess. But yeah, Ken also kind of struggles to approach, same thing as Ryu. They can both approach with side special, kind of, but both are pretty easy to be punished, and then I guess maybe they could fire a Hadouken before approaching, but either options are still really easy to avoid and punish. And then Link is a strong zoner with a really good amount of melee options, although they are really slow. A lot of his out of shield options are actually decent for a zoner, like Fair and Nair out of shield are really good, and so is Down Air. Down Air is probably one of the best moves to get out of combos with in the game, but the problem is that they all have a massive amount of lightning lag, except for neutral air. Back air also really doesn't have that much, but up air, down air, and forward air have landing lag. All of his tilts have decent amounts of landing lag, except for like up tilt and down tilt. And down tilt to fair and back air kind of works for a kill confirm at higher percents, but at percents where it kills on certain characters, it will just knock them off stage and then you have to edgeguard them. Which, Link has the remote bomb for edgeguarding, which is probably the best edgeguarding tool in the game, because it has multiple angles it can be used at, and it covers a lot of distance with the explosion. But Link just in general is kind of slow. Although his zoning tools aren't really as strong as Young Link's, which is why he's so far lower in the list, but his melee options are a little bit stronger than Young Link's. He doesn't really have that many combos as Young Link does, though. But yeah, apparently Link and Kirby are also two of the most popular characters to play according to a lot of, like, are not quizzes, but, I forget what they're called, but, I've seen a lot of people do just, like, questions online of who do people main the most. And towards the beginning of Ultimate, I know that Link and Kirby were the two highest, but I don't really know who outside of that would be now. I guess probably, Joker and Ganondorf would be two of the higher ones. Yeah, I guess surveys. Yeah, that's actually the word I was looking for. But yeah, and then after that we have Rob, who is another zoning character. But he mainly just uses setups. I wouldn't say he's really a zoner, because, like, down special can be used to zone, but it has, a lot of, ending lags. You have to wait for the top to disappear. And then neutral special, if you use that too much, then you can't really use it. So while he does have a lot of zoning tools, he mainly just uses them to set up attacks. And, like, combos and stuff like that. You can do, down special into, like, picking it up, and then you can combo off of it with, like, forward throw of the, item into your opponent, and then into forward air, and then just spam that. Kind of works at certain percents. Down special is really good for edgeguarding, though, because it can either be shot out really quickly or really slowly. It can be Z-dropped, like, slowly, so then you can just use it to cover people recovering low or recovering mid. But it can't really be used to recover high, although Rob's up special does allow him to approach people in the air. But it is kind of slow. Like, Rob in general on the ground is pretty slow, and a lot of his moves don't really have that much range. But he can do things like down throw up air for pretty consistent kills, or down throw up smash at higher percents if down throw up air is not working. His side special is a reflector, and it's also a kill move, so it can be used to approach people that are spamming projectiles pretty easily. And his recovery is kind of exploitable, but it is really good. Like, he can recover from pretty much anywhere on the stage, but he can't really protect himself while he's up specialing. Well, and then if he does try to protect himself, it has startup, and it also makes him go downward. So if you just mess with him enough off stage, and he should not be able to recover. With Ness, Ness actually has a really good matchup against, like, Pikachu and Pichu, apparently. So he definitely has a lot of matchups against top tiers. I would say if he can defeat them pretty easily. He's kind of a zoner, but... Or yeah, I would definitely say he's a zoner, actually. Because he can use, like, slide special to get his hits, but outside of that, all of his moves on the ground are pretty slow. Like, neutral special is slow, up special is kind of slow. If you, have to, like, control it to hit people on the startup, it's really slow. Fair and back air are kind of fast, but they have very limited amounts of range, except for Fair. I would say he probably has a little bit more range than back air. Although if back air does hit Tipper, then it can kill pretty easily. Forward smash has a decent amount of range and is also a reflector. Down special can be used to create infinites and doubles, as if 2 Nesses down special someone in the middle. And then only a few characters, like, I know Shult can switch to Shield Art and get out, but I've heard of a few other characters being able to escape it, but not many people can escape that. So if you're just dealing with like a 2v1 and doubles and both of them are Nesses, then they can actually set up infinites for kills. And then PK Fire is pretty annoying to deal with online, although it can be really easily avoided offline. And it's not even that great of a move offline except for starting combos, but even then you can just SDI out of them to avoid most combos, especially at higher percents. It just doesn't really work. Back throw's kind of good for killing off the sides at higher percents. Like in the middle of the stage, you can kill at like 140% for most characters. And apparently down special also has a wind box that can reflect certain projectiles, but I've never seen it used. All I know is that it can absorb energy projectiles and heal Ness. So it kind of completely shuts down characters like Snake, because they can't really throw their projectiles at Ness. So he does have a good matchup against like Snake and Pikachu, which is something that's really important to have, because those two characters are definitely two of the most threatening characters in the game. especially because they haven't even been seen yet on this tier list. But yeah, in terms of combos, Ness is pretty lackluster. Edge guarding is okay, because you've got like back air for Tipper. Fair's kind of decent at edge guarding, and then down air can spike. But side special can actually 2-frame if you angle it and then you hit people off the top of the hit. And then it kind of sits at ledge, and they can't really approach it. So it's really good against characters like Dr. Mario and Little Mac, because they kind of have to spam up B and hope for the best against side special. And then neutral special and up special can also be used to edge guard, but they're pretty slow. And like up special can also be used to juggle. It's actually really good at juggling because it launches directly upwards if you hit on the ball part. And it's basically like Snake's Nikita, except it doesn't kill as easily. And it moves a little bit faster. And then Ness can also hit himself with it to be able to kill opponents at like 80% at center stage. And then, yeah, I kind of already covered Ike a bit, and I want to go over it just for like timestamps and stuff like that. So Ike still got really bad out of shield options. He's still pretty slow on the ground and in the air, and all of his moves are really slow. But they do a lot of damage if they are connected. Like up special has I believe invincibility on like frame 9 through 14 of the startup, so it is kind of useful for getting out of certain scenarios, and it's probably his best out of shield option. But it doesn't really combo that easily, and it can be punished because it's not that safe to throw out. And then his recovery is pretty lackluster. It's not as bad as someone like Chromed, but Ike can definitely be destroyed by characters like Mario, who have like Flood, and Squirtle, who has Water Gun. Though characters with wind boxes and then characters with counters and spikes can also mess with Ike's recovery and edge guard him. And then Ike's recovery is also pretty linear, because if he's at the top, like, if he's at the top right-hand corner of the screen, he's most likely going to side special in. And then if he's underneath the stage, then he can only up special. So it is really predictable on what he's going to throw out. But on the stage, Ike does have really good combos out of Nair. Like Nair into back air, up air, and fair still work, because Ike hasn't really been messed with in any of the patches. Which is kind of bad, because everyone around him is kind of changing a lot. Where Ike's kind of just moving down slowly in the tier list, because not much has been found about him since, like the beginning of the game, when everyone thought Ike was a top tier character. But, yeah, he still struggles with projectiles because of his slow movement speed on the ground, but he can use side special to kind of get in that regard. It's not safe on shield though, so if opponents do expect it, then they can punish him for throwing it out. And then Young Link is probably the best of all three Links. I think he's the best because he kind of takes Toon Link's zoning tools and upgrades them. Because Toon Link does have decent zoning ability, it's just that all of his zoning tools are really slow, whereas Young Link's are really fast and they can start combos. Like almost all of Young Link's projectiles will start combos. I'm pretty sure the only one that doesn't is Bomb, and it kind of can, but it's not very consistent. Whereas with Arrow, you can do like Arrow into Fair. And then you can also just use the Boomerang to be able to confirm certain hits on certain opponents. Because it will like come back and hit opponents, and then you can hit them into like a forward smash, for example. Young Link also takes the strength of Link and kind of has a lesser version of that, but he's still pretty strong. He's much faster than Breath of the Wild Link, is the one that I'm referring to. So he kind of takes his ability to be able to do decent damage, and he takes Toon Link's ability to be able to combo, because Toon Link has a little bit better combos than Adult Link, but Adult Link does more damage, and Young Link is kind of in the middle of both of them. And I would say his recovery is probably the best of the three Links as well. Up special can be used in combos and stuff like that, but his bomb can also reset it a little bit easier than Link and Toon Link's can, because it has a faster detonation time. And Link also has to blow himself up in a different way from the other two Links. That's a little bit harder to pull off than the other two. And his bomb also has more knockback, so it can kill him a lot easier if he's trying to use it to recover. Young Link also has better edge guarding than both of the other two Links, although I would maybe say Breath of the Wild Link could have better edge guarding, but I think Young Link's fire arrows are a little bit better than his bomb. Although his bomb is definitely better than the other two Links in terms of edge guarding. as you don't even have to let it explode to be able to gimp people's recoveries. Although if you do hit someone, then if you do make it explode, it gimps them a lot harder. Young Link still kind of suffers from the problems of Toon Link and the fact that he can be outranged by other sword characters, because Young Link's sword has very limited range compared to Breath of the Wild Link's sword. But he also kind of suffers against, or struggles against rushdown characters. Like, I know Pichu and Pikachu have a pretty good matchup against Young Link because they can get through his projectiles, and then he's kind of slow on his melee options, but he's not as bad as Breath of the Wild Link. But he's also not as fast as Toon Link, so he can kind of be approached a little bit easier. But his projectiles definitely allow him to camp a lot harder. Wario is kind of someone that I thought was top tier for a long time, but I've kind of decided against that. Wario makes it where you play a two-stock game, although his waft is very predictable most of the time. Like, if you throw out waft at an unpredictable time, 90% of the time you will miss waft because of that. And then if you throw it out at a predictable time, you can kind of set up for it for like up tilt, but it's not really true, so if you just like mash air dodge or jump, then you can just avoid the waft. But waft, if it does connect, it's really good for killing opponents at about 30%, but it doesn't kill them at 0, so if you use it at too low of a percent, then it's not even that useful. It kind of mainly just boosts his recovery now, I would say, because there's just so many ways to avoid waft because of its small range. And it definitely helps his recovery a lot more than his up special does, because it travels a bit higher. And then Wario's disadvantage state without a spike is really bad, so if you use Spike on stage a lot, and then you get knocked off stage and Bike's still on stage and Wario can't recover, because up special travels a little bit worse than Cloud's does, as far as I remember. I didn't really test that one, but I did test Cloud versus Simon and Richter, but I do believe that Wario's would go a little bit less distance than Cloud. And then Wario still has decent on-stage game because his aerials are insanely fast. Like, he is probably the best out of shield in the game, if not like one of the best. Just because like neutral air out of shield and forward air out of shield are just insanely fast. Like Yoshi's out of shield is also decent as well, but they kind of have very similar out of shield options. Wario's up special out of shield works a lot better than Yoshi's does though. And then Wario also still has decent damage output from combos, but he still suffers against sword characters. So he's kind of basically like Yoshi, except he has waft instead of eggs, and he has spike instead of down special, and then also whatever Yoshi's side special is that no one uses because it's not that useful. Then you have Ivysaur, which is going to be the next character. I kind of separated all of the Pokemon Trainer trio. I did this in my last tier list as well, where I rated the Pokemon individually. And then if you use all the Pokemon together, then they'd be about where Pokemon Trainer is, which is only one spot above Ivysaur, because Ivysaur actually just carries Pokemon Trainer. Ivysaur and Raw both have the option to just down air people through the stage for edge guarding, so they have like the safest edge guarding ability in the game, although it's not very consistent on whether they edge guard or not. He does have a pretty weak projectile, but it's still kind of decent. His combo game's a little bit better than Rob's, but it's not as great as someone like Squirtle's. It does do a little bit more damage and knockback than Squirtle's does, and he could do like Nair up special to kill. But it's not a very consistent combo because up special is not actually a true part of the combo. It's like Joker's up tilt up air up special without Arsene, where you can land the up special, but that's just if your opponent doesn't realize that you're going to up special, or you bait out an air dodge and then punish with the up special. But yeah, Ivysaur is still kind of slow on the ground, and he doesn't really have that much. Or I guess he does have a little bit of range with most of his moves, like forward air, back air. I guess back air really doesn't have that. Oh yeah, back air is actually the one that I'm thinking of that does have range. I don't really remember forward air. Oh wait, yeah, I do. It does have a decent amount of range. Up air, down air, and up smash have a really weird hitbox, where they kind of summon a cloud, and that's the hitbox, so it's really hard to tell where they're going to hit. But it's still a pretty good hitbox in terms of like knockback and damage. So if you do run into it, then most of the time it will do a pretty significant amount of damage to you. Ivysaur's disadvantage isn't really that great I doesn't have a very solid recovery though. And then I will have timestamped in the description of this video whenever it goes to YouTube for all of the characters, and then I guess I just kind of leaked top tier like 3 times in a row. At least the bottom part of top tier. But, yeah, I will have timestamps if you want to see all of the individual Pokemon for Pokemon Trainer. And I'm basically just going to say that for Pokemon Trainers that you can check the description for that, but I've already kind of addressed all of Pokemon Trainer's Pokemon individually and their strengths and weaknesses. But now we have Pac-Man, who's probably the best setup character in the game. I would kind of consider him a rushdown setup character, kind of like I consider Rob, where he does have projectiles and he can zone, but a lot of the time what he does is he'll zone out opponents and then he'll just approach them, so he's kind of just a rushdown character with extra steps at the beginning. But like Galaxian, for example, he can just throw out Galaxian and then combo off of it, and then re-grab it and combo off of it, and that's basically just a zoning character using a projectile in the middle of their combo. I mean, not zoning, but a rushdown character using a projectile in the middle of their combo. But yeah, his setups do allow him to get a lot of hits in, because he does have pretty limited range melee, but they are really fast options. Like, all of his tilts are pretty quick, and then his smash attacks don't really have that much in lag or startup lag. But they can still be punished, because they're not that safe to throw out. And then, all of his fruits are pretty useful, in their own way, but I would say, like, the most useful ones are, like, Bell for confirming hits, Melon for killing, Q for killing, and, I guess just, like, Cherry or, Orange for just getting people off of you quickly if somebody's trying to approach you, because they're 2 of the earlier fruits and they have a decent amount of range and knockback. Well, I guess Cherry doesn't really have that much range, but it's still a pretty decent option for getting people off of you quickly. Obviously, he has one of the best landing abilities in the game with, the Fire Hydrant, and he can also use that to increase the speed of his projectiles, and also push himself forward to extend the range of his smash attacks a bit, but it's kind of useless because you can also just destroy the Fire Hydrant pretty easily, as it only takes about 13% to be able to destroy, and then you can use it to edgeguard. But Pac-Man still has one of the best recoveries in the game. He probably has the best recovery in the game, if we didn't count, or if I didn't count, I guess, Snake's ability to recover infinitely. Because Snake can blow himself up with C4 to continue his recovery. Whereas with Pac-Man, Pac-Man just can slide special and, up special to recover from pretty much anywhere on the screen. Although Snake also has a chance to kill himself with his recovery, so I guess it might not be as great as what people think. But just in terms of, like, a recovery, I guess. Not in terms of, just, keeping him alive. Although characters like Fox and Falco can kind of just completely get rid of Pac-Man's setups and really destroy Pac-Man because they have reflectors that are pretty quick. B tier's by high tier though, Adam. So he's still high, but he's not in top tier. Which is definitely an improvement for him. But I would just say his main problem is range, and then his neutral is okay at best, but it's still not as great as some of the other characters in high or top tier. And then he really struggles to approach. But then now we have Mega Man, who has a lot of projectiles. Obviously, all of his moves pretty much are just projectiles, so he is going to be a zoner. He probably has the best defensive projectiles in the game, other than maybe Samus's down special. But he's got moves like Leaf Shield to make up for that, because Leaf Shield's kind of broken. Although it's not as broken as it used to be, because it used to be able to make infinites. But it still does a decent amount of damage. It does move pretty slowly, though. A lot of his melee attacks do have pretty limited range, if they're not like neutral air or dash, or not dash attack, but like forward tilt and jab are all basically the same move. So that kind of negates 3 moves out of Mega Man's toolkit, which could potentially hurt him, but I don't think forward tilt should be the pellets, but every other move is perfectly fine, because he could actually shoot his projectiles up into the air, and then his jab should be the pellets, but I feel like he should have kind of a unique move out of the 3 in either one of the options. His juggling is probably the best in the game with his up air, as up air can just be spammed pretty much infinitely, and then he can also use Rush Coil to up air people off of the top of the screen at like 20% and kill them. Although you do have to kind of set up for it a lot for that to work. Or you can kill at 0 off the top, but They have to like jump into it for it to kill that low. But it does kill off the top at like 60% consistently. He can get a lot of damage out off of a few hits, but the main problem with Mega Man is that he doesn't really have any anti-approach options. Like, he doesn't really have too many, like, defensive options if he's getting attacked by, like, Roy and Chrom, for example. He can kind of keep them away and zone them out defensively, but once they actually approach him and get in, all he can basically do is, like, fair and back air, and then maybe grab, or down tilt, but all of his other options are a little bit too slow. Like, up smash if people are landing on you, and down smash, they're both incredibly slow. They're actually slower than his forward smash, which is honestly one of the better forward smashes in the game because it has range. Because it is a projectile that he launches forward. It can be reflected, but it does allow him to forward smash a little bit safer than most characters. And then Pichu, one of the characters that was hit pretty hard by the nerf. He wasn't hit as hard by Olimar, but all of the moves that do electric damage to him get increased damage to him, so now his self-damage builds up a lot faster. He still has a pretty bad disadvantage in his size increase, and his self-damaging moves definitely hurt him a lot in that regard. Because he has pretty limited range, and if they would have increased the range on some of his moves, that would have helped out his disadvantage a lot. But instead, they just made it where he's easier to hit, and he hurts himself more for trying to get people away from him. So he can still die at like 60%, something like that, because they didn't increase his weight when they increased his height. Because I would think he would weigh the same, or at least around the same as Pikachu if they increase his height, but he's still the lightest character in the game, so that definitely hurts his disadvantage a lot. He's still got combos though, like he can still combo in the exact same way before and after the patch, you're just going to damage him more. And then losing forward tilt was probably forward tilt was honestly one of the best moves in the game before the patch, but now after the patch it's not that great of a move because it no longer kills people at about 110% and can barely kill people at like 130% now. It just depends on how light the character is. But his recovery is still pretty strong and all of his combos are still pretty strong. Fox is still kind of the same in my opinion. Like, I used to think he was top tier, but when I actually picked up Fox as like a secondary, I realized that he was kind of overrated. And now people are starting to realize how overrated he was. He has some of the worst edge guarding in the game. Like, all he can really do is nair and back air to edge guard. All of the other options either send upwards, or like fair, for example, doesn't even hit all the hits consistently. It can actually result in Fox losing a stock, because if he fares too low to the ground, then he actually can't cancel it into an up special. So then he can die. His disadvantage is still pretty bad. It's about as bad as Pichu's, because they're both really light characters, although he does have a reflector, which does help him out in disadvantage, surprisingly. As if he's being attacked by characters like Simon and Richter, there's not much that they can do to threaten him off stage safely, because their edge guarding isn't that great without their projectiles. Fox is still insanely fast on the ground, though, and he still has the fastest falling speed in the game, so he can just kind of spam up air to juggle people very easily. Up smash is still a really good move out of shield, and so is like up air and nair out of shield. They're all really good options. His combos are still pretty much the exact same, but I feel like Roy and Chrom are starting to come back into the game, so that's why I kind of put them higher than Fox. Fox was actually, in my last tier list, Fox was here, but I would say because Roy and Chrom are starting to become stronger characters, he just moves down one spot. But he didn't actually really change that much in the last patch. I don't even think the last patch affected him, if I remember correctly. But yeah, now we have Roy and Chrom. The differences between the two is that Roy's hilt does more damage than the rest of his sword. The rest of his sword is Sour Spot. And then Chrom does damage throughout his sword. And their up specials are different. I feel like Roy's up special is slightly better than Chrom, but not actually by much, because both are really easy to edge guard. As Royce doesn't really travel that much distance horizontally either, but it does travel a decent amount of distance horizontally and vertically. Whereas Chrom's is just like pure horizontal, or pure vertical distance compared to Roy's. But yeah, both are still sword characters, so they're really good at being able to like shield pressure and hit people from far away. Both are still able to do pretty much the exact same things as Lucina and Mars, except they are able to combo a little bit better. And I would say Chrome's combos work a little bit better than Roy's. They both have pretty much the exact same combos, but Chrome's will do more damage more consistently. And Chrome can also set up a lot of things like jab into forward smash, which is actually kind of insane because jab into forward smash kills a little bit faster than jab into Shoryuken does for like Ken and Ryu. But Chrome is still kind of considered to be a pretty bad character due to his recovery, which I think a lot of people are starting to realize that his recovery is actually not really that bad. As if you play on stages like Town and City, there was that one time, I forget who it was, but there was a Chrom player who actually like up specialed onto the platform of Town and City while it was moving in to be able to recover. So he does have a lot of recovery options, and his air dodge is actually kind of decent, and so is his aerial drift. But if he is out of his jump, then he doesn't really have a good recovery still. And same thing with Roy. Like Roy's recovery is pretty much the same as Chrom's, except it travels more horizontal distance at the cost of traveling less vertical. Though there's been a lot of times I've seen like Chrom go for an edge guard and be able to make it back, and then Roy attempt the same type of edge guard and not be able to make it back because his up special just doesn't reach high enough, as it actually covers less vertical distance than Dolphin Slash with Marth and Lucina. Side special is still really good for both of them, and then they still have really good Nair. Chrom can still Chromikaze, and it still doesn't kill him first for some reason, even though it should. I guess I did forget to mention that, but I can also Chromikaze, I guess, but it is a little bit easier to perform with Chrom, as Chrom can actually combo into it. But Roy definitely is a little bit better at approaching than Chrom, I would say, because Roy gets rewarded a lot more for approaching because of its hilt damage. If he's right next to someone, then he doesn't have to worry about hitting his sour spot, because most of the time the hilt has a really large hitbox compared to like Mars Tipper, for example. Which is still kind of weird. I think Mars Tipper should have about the same size as Roy's hilt in terms of hitbox, but Mars Tipper is much smaller in comparison. And then Chrom can still do pretty much everything that Roy can, except sometimes he can't recover, and then sometimes Roy can't recover in the same way that Chrom can. But Chrom technically does more damage overall, whereas Roy will do more damage in matchups where he is playing a rush young character, where Chrom does more damage in matchups where he's playing like Marth or Lucina, or characters that try to space him out. So yeah, now on to top tier, which is going to be my bottom 5. S tier is going to be my top 5 characters, and this is just going to be my bottom 5, which kind of could be controversial for this tier alone. I feel like my top 5 is not too controversial. The order might be, but I feel like a lot of people are going to question this decision here. But I guess we can kind of get into it. Palutena's a pretty good zoner. She's probably the second best in the game, as I really wouldn't consider Peach and Daisy or Inkling to be zoning characters, as most of the time they do attack opponents up close to them, whereas Palutena still tries to zone them. The only other zoner character that hasn't been mentioned so far is Snake, and I consider him to be the best one in the game. But dash attack and back air are really good for approaching, and then back air is also really good for retreating, as back air has the shield and so does dash attack. Side special and neutral special are really good for forcing reactions out of people that Palutena can try to approach, but Palutena is really slow on the ground and has a lot of slow ground options. So Nair out of shield is a really good option, as it is able to combo into itself at least twice, and then you can maybe get a fair or a back air out of it. She really struggles against rush on characters, though, which is kind of something that isn't really discussed that much. Like, I would say pretty much Inkling, Roy Chrom, Fox, Pichu, Greninja, and I guess Palutena actually does have a pretty decent matchup against these two, potentially. Or no, she has a decent matchup against Marth and Lucina, I think, but maybe not Roy and Chrom. And then I would say that Squirtle is also pretty good against Palutena, whereas a lot of like rush on characters like them do pretty decent against Palutena. But Palutena is still really good on the ground, but just kind of slow and laggy. Like, a lot of her aerials have a ton of landing lag that she's open to be punished at. Okay, I'm not going to confirm or deny your guess, but it could be pretty close. But, yeah, it may or may not be correct, although it might or may not be in the top 3 as well. I actually don't remember who I put in what order in the top 5. Well, I remember number 5 and number 1, but I don't remember the other 3. So, yeah. Because he hasn't been mentioned on the list at all. And I can actually show the full tier list at the end of this by maximizing the screen. What character do you think kills heavies the best, and while also racking good damage up against him? I like pretty much one of my matchup for heavies. I guess, I mean, I would say Pikachu does pretty decent against heavies, more than Lucina. Or I guess mainly just Lucina does decent against heavies. Peach and Daisy kind of struggle against heavies, though. And, Shulk does really good against heavies, and also can mix up his damage depending on the art that he's in. But he's much more complicated. But I would say, like, Marth, Lucina are really good against heavies. And yeah, other heavies as well. Like, I would say Mega Man's pretty good against heavies because he can just zone, and they can't really approach him. Or some of the faster heavies can, but they can't really get close enough to him to be able to affect him too much. Yeah, and then, let's see, so next character is going to be Inkling. Inkling really didn't get affected by the patch at all. She just got her jab buff, which is kind of a bad thing, actually, because Inkling's jab is one of the best in the game, so it's really good for Inkling. So now it just combos into itself better. Jab can actually lead into about, like, 50%, depending on how many hits you get on the rapid jab. And it can also ink opponents, so then you can just get a few hits after the jab to deal decent amounts of percent because of how much damage will build up. Inkling's ink mechanic is definitely still broken, I think, at least. It could be that it's intended to allow Inkling to do like 1.5 times the amount of damage whenever a character is fully inked, and be able to kill most opponents at about 80%, but I'm not really sure on that with like up throw, up air. Which up throw, up air is not really consistent, but it still kind of works. The main problem with Inkling is that a lot of her game plan is pretty linear, because most of the time she's gonna do the same amount of things, although it's kind of hard to read Inkling if she does mix up, because she can be invincible on like her dash grab and dash attack on the first few frames, because she's still in the ground. Which definitely makes it harder for characters to combat her. And then, sword characters like Marth and Lucina can't really like spam Nair against Inkling, because Inkling can actually just run underneath them because of how low her dash hitbox is. And dash and roll look the same still, so that's definitely something that's hard to identify what Inkling's going to do. Although Inkling can't really spam dash, so, or spam roll, so it's kind of obvious in certain scenarios. But Inkling's recovery is kind of bad as well. It's definitely one that's kind of overrated in terms of like the amount of skill it takes for Inkling to be able to recover, because a lot of people think that Inkling can kind of just recover for free, when Inkling kind of has to meet specific areas in certain matchups. Like, if Inkling were to ink at a diagonal angle in certain matchups, like against Peach and Daisy, it works a lot better than against characters like Ivysaur and Rob, who can just down air Inkling for trying to go for up special. And then up specialing on the stage is pretty much suicide for Inkling, as it has a ton of inline. And then for Shulk, he was going to be the... Or I guess Inkling also kind of struggles against matchups against range characters, because some of her moves are kind of slow in terms of melee. Like, Lucina's moves are a little bit faster on the ground, so she can definitely beat out Inkling's moves a bit, but Inkling can still do a decent amount of damage output if she does start getting in hits. Next character is going to be Shulk, and I think Shulk will probably move up a lot in this tier list. He probably will be here by the end of Smash, unless he gets nerfed in some way, like they take away dial storage, for example. But yeah, I kind of, in the script that I have, listed all of Shulk's arts, but I'm basically not going to go over them because most Shulk players will know what the arts do, and even people that don't play Shulk kind of have an idea of how to combat against them. But obviously, he has pretty massive damage output, he's got a lot of range, his recovery is really good depending on what art he has. His damage output can be increased by Buster art, and then his knockback can be increased by Smash art, which you can actually kind of just use the dial storage to mix up your arts and be able to get a lot of combos. Like, you can use Buster arts to deal a lot of damage, and then dial storage into Smash art to be able to kill within like a few seconds. So it's really dangerous to fight against Shulk unless you kind of know how to combat his arcs. or his arts, not his arcs, but Shulk also is kind of slow on the ground unless he's got speed art activated, obviously. But with most of his arts, especially shield and jump art, they kind of slow him down a lot. So he has pretty limited movement options unless he's in speed. And speed takes a while to regenerate because of this. But Shulk also kind of struggles to kill if he doesn't have Smash Art activated, but he can still edgeguard people pretty easily if he doesn't have Smash Art. And then within like Shield Art, Shulk can't kill at all, but he can use it to escape combos using Dial Storage. And I kind of went over Dial Storage in my Shulk guide earlier, and that should be on Twitch, but it's probably not going to be out on YouTube whenever this gets out. So that could be something that you could just watch in case you have no idea how Dial Storage works. Basically, it's just Shulk cancels the startup lag on choosing his arts. So whenever you hold down B, you can choose the art, and then you have all 5 of the options. But with Dial Storage, you can just pretty much like instantly switch, kind of like how he can press B to instantly switch. But you don't really have to go through the long line to get to the better arts of like Buster and Smash, which are usually at the end of the line. And you also don't have to worry about hitting B a little bit too much and skipping over the art that you want and have to go through the cycle all over again. Shulk's recovery is also not that great without speed or jump art equipped, as it's really easy to edgeguard, and it's still kind of easy to edgeguard with jump art equipped, but with speed art it's a little bit harder, although it doesn't go as high. Zero Suit Samus is a character that's definitely moved up a lot. Like, Zero Suit Samus was about here, but I would say Zero Suit's around here now, as Zero Suit kind of just is a character that forces reactions out of people. Definitely a really good character for like trapping opponents into combos. Like, Zero Suit can kind of condition opponents to drop shield and then just punish them for dropping shield with neutral B and then get a combo started, or like do neutral B into up special for a kill at about 80% at the ledge. Her edge guarding is really good with flip kick, or I guess dive kick, I don't actually remember what it's called, but her down special basically. Down special also gives her a lot of movement options in the air and on the ground. So she can kind of just move around the stage a lot better than most characters can, and outmaneuver them and get out of their combos using down special. But she can kind of struggle to kill if she doesn't get a lot of her kill setups to set up, and she also doesn't really have that much melee range without like neutral air, or like, I guess down special kind of has range, but it has pretty limited range on the hitbox. It actually does damage, but it does cover a lot of distance. Down special can also be baited and punished by characters like Lucina and Pikachu. For Peach and Daisy, the nerfs definitely hit them pretty hard. I didn't really expect it to hit them as hard as it did, and it kind of made me want to start thinking about dropping Daisy as like a secondary main, as I kind of have Lucina as my main character, and then Daisy was kind of also there, because I had put in a lot of practice with Daisy before I switched into Lucina. But Daisy and Peach are pretty much identical, except their float hitboxes are a little bit different, but it really doesn't matter on that regard. So I pretty much just say they're identical. They used to have a bit of differences though, but that got patched out. Their disadvantage is not that great anymore because they can't just pull out turnips to be able to escape disadvantage because they can be punished for it. And they also can't really pull out turnips in neutral as well without being punished for it. They can really only pull it out in disadvantage, unless they kind of space themselves out enough to get the turnip safely. Down tilt to fair is still a kill combo, though it kills much later now, because the fair nerf, and then back throw kills a lot later now, off the sides, and that was kind of their main kill through, but the turnip nerf definitely hurt them a lot. It was kind of something that a lot of people didn't expect for them to be nerfed, because the turnips were kind of always they've always been the same, like no one's ever really complained about the turnips that much. But the fact that they got nerfed definitely hurt them a lot more than just their float cancel nerfs or anything like that. Because if they would have just made it where float canceling doesn't do full hop damage anymore and it does short hop damage, it definitely would have still allowed them to be in the top 5 on the list. They still struggle in matchups like against Shulk and Lucina, who can outrange him with swords, but they can still approach him pretty easily with turnips, and also dash hack. Slide special was also a pretty big nerf that I kind of forgot to mention, but slide special can no longer be used to like pressure shields as easily, and is really easy to punish now. They still have a really strong advantage state in combo game, because that really wasn't affected that much. But, there's still it's still kind of risky to play them now compared to some of the top tier characters, or in S tier, because this is still considered top tier by me, at least. So now we can actually look at S tier, and that will be showing all 5 of the top characters, because I don't have an S plus tier or anything like that. So yeah, this is my top 5 in the game currently. And yeah, I forgot that Pikachu was actually there, so I did put Wolf in top 3. I wasn't sure if I had Wolf in top 3 or if I had Pikachu in top 3. Or if I had Snake in top 3 and Wolf in 2 and Pikachu in 2. Like, I didn't really know the option, or the mix-up between these 3. But I knew that I still had Joker at the top and Lucina at the bottom. Lucina's nerfs really didn't affect her as much as most people think that it would. Like, I thought it would definitely hurt her a lot, but they just made it where both of those moves kill about 6% later, which definitely isn't that bad of a change. But as a Lucina main, it was kind of scary until I kind of tested it a lot more. Like, whenever I streamed it originally, I thought it was a big nerf, but now it's probably just kind of a minuscule nerf. Because they can still kill really early at lower percents with forward smash, and then they can still edge guard with forward air in about the same way. But same problems with Marth are the same problems with Lucina, where she can kind of struggle to recover, but she doesn't really have to worry about spacing out as much as Marth does. Her spacing is still pretty important because some of her moves aren't that safe on shield, like forward air and back air, but she doesn't have to rely on spacing moves for them to be safe on shield, whereas with Marth, he has to make sure that he hits the tip of his sword, or else the moves aren't going to be safe. She also struggles against projectile characters, which was something I forgot to mention with Marth, is that they both struggle with projectiles, and I would say Roy and Chrom do as well. But she still has decent shield pressure, she still has good, or I guess kind of good combos. Her combo game's usually just like down throw fair, or down throw up air, maybe like up tilt up air potentially, but I really have no idea. And yeah, Joker is pretty broken, and I'll get into that. And I also forgot to mention that I do think Shulk has the best or disadvantage state in the game. I kind of mentioned that in my Shulk video, but Shield Art just allows Shulk to be able to escape any combo instantly. Kind of forgot to mention that, but that's also broken. And that's the main reason why I can see Shulk moving up, is because he can literally escape any true combo in the game if he dial storages into Shield Art. But yeah, Lucina still is a really strong character, even after the nerfs, basically. Pikachu actually got buffed with a grab range increase, which kind of just means that it's a lot easier for him to approach people, which is really good, because his approach is kind of weak. He kind of has to Thunder Jolt spam, and then whenever he sees how people react to the Thunder Jolts, like if they always shield it or if they parry it, then he'll just use a Thunder Jolt and then start approaching and punishing what option they throw out. So now he can actually use grab from a further distance if people decide to shield it all the time, or if they try to parry it a lot, rather than like jumping out of the way and stuff like that. Still has really good out of shield options. Still has loops. He still has good combos. He still has a pretty good recovery, and his damage output is still the same as it was in the previous patch. But he still has a pretty bad disadvantage, and he can still struggle against ranged characters like Snake and Lucina. And I don't really think that he would struggle against Palutena, but potentially he could. It's probably like an even matchup, maybe a little bit in Pikachu's favor, but I could see it going either way on that regard. But yeah, the grab range buff didn't really affect Pikachu too much. Like, it made it where it's easier for him to approach, but he still doesn't really use grab that much. So, because a lot of his grab combos aren't as great as his standard combos. We still have 3 more characters, and at number 3 is going to be Wolf. Wolf's down smash was nerfed for a second time in the patch, and it's still kind of broken actually. And still 2-frame people at the legend kill them at like 50% instead of 40%, pretty much. It still has decent knockback on stage. It still's fast. It's not safe on shield, but it's kind of safe for spacing. He still has a really good combo game that was actually buffed in the patch, because now down special can be used for combos, as its launch angle is the same as fair, and I believe it is a little bit faster, although it does cover more area around Wolf because it is the shield around Wolf, so it can be used to combo a bit easier than Fair. It does have a bit of startup to it though, so Fair's a bit faster, but it covers less, and down special's a bit slower, but it covers more options. All of his moves basically still kill the same way, except down smash kills a little bit slower. I guess up special kills a bit later now, because I think the launch angle got changed in this patch, or it might have been the last patch, because I also didn't make a patch for 3.0. I only made one for the last 2 point something patch, and then whenever 3.0 was out, I was planning on getting through all my character day guides, and then doing a tier list, but now that 3.1 has came out, and they've already announced that the hero is going to be out most likely next month, then I feel like now would have been the time to talk about the tier list. And a lot of people are making their tier list now, and I kind of wanted to get mine out before Zero's, because last time that I made a tier list, Zero's tier list came out about the same day. If not, it was like the day before, and it made me kind of rethink a lot of my spots on my tier list. But now that I have it out before Zero's, as far as I know, and I haven't seen Zero's at least, then I can say that this is kind of all my opinions pretty much on each character. There were a few tier lists that I did see, like I saw ESAM's and I saw DeBuzz's tier list yesterday, but I kind of didn't agree with a lot of the placements on them. So now we're on to the top two, which is going to be Snake. Snake is easily the best zoner in the game. All of his projectiles do massive amounts of shield pressure, they do massive amounts of damage, they can be used to combo, they can be used to kill at higher to mid percents. So kind of like from like 130% to like 100%, I would say, or maybe even like 80% if you were talking about up smash. It can definitely kill around that percent. And then his down throw can create tech chases at any percent, and he's really good at tech chases, surprisingly, even though he is kind of slow on the ground. A lot of his grounded moves are pretty slow, which is definitely something that holds him back from Joker. Like, the only reason I would say that Snake isn't as good as Joker currently, or is not even better than Joker, is the fact that Snake's grounded options are really slow, and like his out of shield is kind of bad. Or I guess he could do grenade out of shield, but that's pretty much his only good out of shield option. And then if he has 2 grenades on the ground already, then he actually can't do grenade out of shield, which definitely hurts him out. Or it hurts him a lot more than it would for most other characters. And then, now finally, at number 1 is going to be Joker. So whenever Joker first came out, I thought he was going to be a high tier, because a lot of people... Oh yeah, down air out of shield is frame 4, but it covers specific options, so like if people are standing at your shield, then you will be able to hit them like underneath you. But if people are like jumping at your shield, then like jumping and short hop and airing at your shield, then down air doesn't really hit as easily. But yeah, Snake's out of shield isn't like the worst in the game or anything like that. It's just not as strong as a character like Joker's out of shield or Lucina's out of shield. But yeah, I did forget about down air out of shield, and that is one of his better options. But grenade out of shield is still frame 1, so it's probably his best out of shield option. And it can just be used to kind of cover a large area around him. But yeah, whenever Joker first came out, I kind of thought he was going to be high tier and be kind of balanced. I thought he was going to be like around here, although a lot of the characters that are around here currently were either down here or up here, so I thought Joker was kind of going to be worse than a lot of them. But MKLeo's been doing a lot of stuff with Joker, and that kind of has influenced my decision on putting him at number 1, but he's also MKLeo, so he's probably the best character in Smash currently. So I really have no idea on his competitive, like, ability, as the only person I've seen use him competitively is MKLeo. Like, a lot of the other Jokers I've seen have done really well, I guess, but the main one is going to be Leo. Joker still has some of the best out-of-shield options in the game without Arsene. Without Arsene, Joker has good combos, good out-of-shield and defensive options, decent kill power, and combos, and also decent range, a great recovery, great edge guarding, and a decently high damage output. But with Arsene, Joker maintains all of those things, except I would say his recovery actually gets worse with Arsene, which I'll kind of talk about in a minute, but his edge guarding gets a lot better with Arsene. His combos, they're kind of worse in terms of number of hits, but they do more damage. Joker's out of shield is a lot better because he can get people away from him faster. his kill power is obviously increased a lot with Arsene because it's kind of balanced around Joker having Arsene, making him being able to kill, while as without Arsene he's able to combo, but he can kind of kill with both because he can do first hit of fair into up smash for a very easy kill at higher percents. Like at 110%, he can do forward air to kill or to up smash for a really easy kill combo on most characters. But yeah, Joker with Arsene is definitely weaker in terms of recovery because his up special at the ledge is really easy to two-frame. It's about as easy as Pit and Dark Pits because they have very similar recoveries in that regard. But it definitely goes a pretty far distance. But if he lands on stage out of his up special with Arsene, then he has 30 frames of end lag, which means that he has about half a second in which he can be punished. So pretty much any move in the game is able to hit Joker if he does land on stage with Arsene. But if he uses his up special grappling hook, he can kind of delay his recovery, which is really useful because a lot of people think that you're going to recover as quickly as possible, but if you delay, you might be able to bait out an option and then be able to like reverse edge guard and stuff like that. His up special with Arsene is also not that useful with comboing, but it's still pretty useful for recovering. It's just not as great as up special without Arsene. Joker's kill power with Arsene definitely increases a lot. A lot of his moves can kill at about the same percent that Mars Tipper moves kill, which is actually kind of scary, because that's basically like having a really good version of Marth with like consistent Tipper damage, because now Joker doesn't really have to space out his moves. Like obviously he's still going to get rewarded for spacing with like back air and fair, but he doesn't necessarily have to, whereas with like Marth and Lucina, they're heavily dependent on spacing. With Joker, if you try to challenge his spacing, then most of the time that will result in a stock loss from Joker, because he can just take stocks very quickly. Joker kind of gets comboed a bit, but if he can get Rebel's Guard put up in time, or if he has Arsene and he can get a counter out quickly, then he can pretty much escape any combo. So his disadvantage is probably the second best in the game. I would say Shulk still has the best disadvantage, but Joker's is a pretty close second. Although Joker's advantage is easily the best in the game, as he can do a lot of shield pressure and he has a lot of damage output. His neutral's also pretty safe because a lot of his moves don't really have that much landing lag or ending lag in general. Like up smash out of shield really isn't that laggy compared to a lot of characters. Especially like Lucina, Pikachu, and Wolf all have laggier up, and so does Snake I guess as well. They all have laggier up smashes out of shields than Joker does. And that's one of his fastest options as well. It's basically like Fox's up smash out of shield. Except Joker also gets a spike in with Arsene, which is definitely something that improves his already good edge guarding. Because his recovery kind of just allows him to hit people off stage whenever he wants to. So they can be all the way at the blast zone and he can just kind of run over and back air them off stage and then get back to stage anyway using its up special with or without Arsene. Because it's both pretty much the same, it's just Arsene goes a little bit further, but it's a little bit worse. And then Joker's, I guess that's kind of it for Joker actually. Like in neutral, Joker kind of just beats everyone at neutral because not that many people can approach him, and then he can just approach people and combo them for free. Joker's disadvantage is boosted by Arsene and Rebellion's Guard, and his recovery is one of the best in the game. So he can kind of just recover for free. It can be reflected though, without Arsene, which is kind of strange, because it doesn't look like it would be a move that could be reflected. Like his gun looks like it should be reflected as it does shoot projectiles, but it can't be reflected, and its up special looks like it shouldn't be able to be reflected because it doesn't look like a projectile, but it can be. So I guess that he can kind of be edgeguarded by characters like Fox, which is kind of unique because Joker's like the only character that Fox can edgeguard really easily, other than like Little Mac. But usually people that have really solid recoveries are able to just get past Fox's edgeguarding, but Joker's the only one that can. At least not consistently. Well, Fox doesn't really have any good two-framing options, I guess. But yeah, that's going to be it for this tier list, so I guess now I will do this so you can just see everyone's placements. I kind of have a script that I'd written for every character in the game, and that's what took so long on getting the tier list. Like, I've been working on this for about a week, just like the script alone. But I kind of just went off the script a bit and then kind of just wrote my own things. But this will be on YouTube today. I've kind of planned on letting it release next week whenever I'm on vacation, but I kind of want to get it out before Zero Steerless is out. And that could come out next week, and then if that happens, then it'll already be too late. So I'm just going to let this one release today, and then I've already recorded 2 videos for, like, Friday and Saturday, I think, or it might be, like, Thursday and Friday. I think it's actually whenever the videos are supposed to come out. So this one will come out today, and will be kind of like a double upload. But for now, I'm kind of going to take a break and end the stream here as I've streamed for 2 hours, 39 minutes, and 50 seconds currently, and that's increasing. And my throat's kind of hurting a bit. Like, I have been drinking a bit of water, but kind of just need to take a minute to rest. And then when I get back, I will be able to do CPU tournaments. If I'm not back later, that's because I just ran out of time and kind of had to do stuff off stream, which I don't think I have anything to do off stream after this stream, but I should. But I don't know if I will, because I just don't know yet. So yeah, that's going to be it for this stream, and I guess I hope to see everyone in the next one.